Commissioner, so I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order for April 6, 2021 meeting, and it is 7:02. Ms. Cole, will you take roll?
Mr. Breeden?
Here.
Ms. Height?
Here.
Mr. Wagner?
Here.
Mr. Greenwood?
Here.
Chairman Rhodes?
Here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a thick package, but at the beginning of the package, we have our meeting agenda from our March 3rd meeting, which was actually recessed and reconvened. If commissioners have had an opportunity to review those, I do have some comments, but it's more of a technicality. Do you all have any changes or comments to those minutes?
No.
Madam Chair.
Yeah, I did it out of order, didn't I, Ms. Height?
Oh, it's meeting agenda first and then the consideration of minutes. I did have one observation regarding the minutes on agenda item 10 as far as the recess was concerned. I noted that it records the motion was made and seconded, but it did not indicate that that it was unanimous.
Very good point. So if we could change that, that a vote was taken and the meeting, a unanimous vote was obtained for the recess of the meeting. Any other comments? Okay, the only observation I would have is I would recognize in this, and I'm happy to send the paragraph that the meeting, because it says the meeting was recessed, but I think we also need to say that the meeting reconvened on March 24th on 2021, at which time the commissioners discussed the survey and the stakeholder results as summarized by the Berkeley Group. And then reflect that the meeting was adjourned. Does anyone have any comments to add to that? And if not, if we could make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Breeden.
Second.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Wagner. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, so the meeting minutes have been approved as amended. Apologize, I got it out of order. I always do it. I mix them up. So does anyone have any comments on the meeting agenda? If not, we can go ahead and make a motion to approve the agenda as drafted.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Greenwood. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Ms. Height. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So our meeting agenda has been approved. Now we have the public comment period. This is an opportunity for members who are in attendance to speak. We have 3 minutes for any one individual. We would ask that you identify yourself and maybe the district in which you reside. And then if you're speaking on behalf of a group, you have 5 minutes to speak. I would ask, how do people request to speak? Do they raise their hand or put something in the chat?
Madam Chair, usually they can send a note in the group chat to Eric and he'll see, or they can raise their hand. I don't know which one Eric would prefer, but also just a point of clarification. The main public comment period is only for items that are not on public hearing. So it's a kind of a technicality, but just so they have to wait for the public hearings to speak. This is only on items that are not in public hearing. Thanks.
Thank you.
Oh, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Greenwood. I appreciate that's an important point because we have 4 items
Right.
we have on the agenda this evening for public hearing. Appreciate that. Okay, so we'll allow some time for people to chime in, raise your hand, chat, or otherwise identifies wanting to speak?
Madam Chair, this is Steve Tuppence. I reside in the 3rd District. Also represent the Upper Mattaponi Indian Tribe. Per your request at the last meeting, I am here this evening for, I guess, item number 7A. I want to also let you know that on the Zoom call this evening, we have Reggie Tuppence, who is our tribal administrator. We have Lee Mitchell, who is our natural resource director. And then we also have Marion Werkheiser, who is our attorney with Cultural Heritage Partners.
Wonderful. We appreciate y'all being here. And yes, I do recall at our March 3rd meeting, we expressed an interest in having you here at this meeting. We do have unfinished business, as you recall, for the new water tower. That discussion was, or the vote was tabled at the time due to concerns that were raised, and that will be on agenda item number 7A. So we appreciate you all being here.
And will we have an opportunity to speak during that unfinished business, or?
We have Mr. Hudgens, who is our interim county administrator, who will be speaking. I don't have any issues with an opportunity for engagement. How do my fellow commissioners feel about that opportunity in case questions arise?
It might be better to have them speak at this point. It's just a thought, because there is no public hearing.
Yeah.
And if we open it up to those folks, we need to open up to other folks too, I think.
So that is a good point. What we would ask is, perhaps, since you represent a group, you have 5 minutes to speak. And perhaps if you'd like to, you can speak to some of the same items that you addressed on our March 3rd meeting.
And what I'm going to do, Madam Chair, is I'm going to go ahead and step back. And looks like Chief Frank Adams has joined the Zoom as well and is requested to speak. So I'm going to rescind my request to represent the tribe and allow the chief to speak on behalf of our people.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. This is Chief Frank Adams, and I guess I probably should hold my comments until we get to the agenda item that I want to speak about. So if that is a proper protocol.
We are actually, as Mr. Breeden pointed out, this is our moment for the public comment period. We only have one per meeting. So what we would ask is, even though it may seem premature, we would ask you all use these 5 minutes now to express any concerns or thoughts you have with respect to the proposed, what was a proposed new water tower location.
Madam Chair, this is Don Wagner. I would propose that the tribe, Chief Adams and Mr. Tuppence, stay available and be here to be at the presentation by Mr. Hudgens to answer and respond to any questions and have any discussion that will add substance to the issue we're discussing.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'm totally fine with that. On the one hand, they would be able to speak now and not have to hang around for all the public hearings we have. On the other hand, Mr. Wagner is quite correct that it might be more useful for them to speak after we've heard the presentation. The only thing I would ask is that we allow other people to speak at that point as well.
Okay. So we'll ask you all your preference, if you would like to speak now and use this 5 minutes. If we do open it up as well at the end of the meeting for that agenda item, we will be opening up to others as well. Should we proceed in that way?
Well, Madam Chair, this is Frank Adams again. I will go ahead and make my statement now, and I will stay on the meeting.
Perfect.
If we need any more information from me or the Upper Mattaponi tribe.
Thank you so much.
All right. So, Madam Chair and Honorable Commissioners, my name is Frank Adams. I am Chief of the Upper Mattaponi tribe, and I'm also a past member of the King William County Board of Supervisors. But today, or tonight, I am speaking on behalf of the Upper Mattaponi tribe. And I thank you all for welcoming the Upper Mattaponi tribe to this meeting. Like I said, I am the chief of the tribe, which now finally, after 400 years, are a federally recognized tribe in King William County, Virginia. And I just want to make everyone aware that with federal recognition of the tribe's sovereignty comes additional rights and responsibilities. The tribe can now access federal funding to support government operations, and we look forward to exploring ways to bring value to the county that will enhance the quality of life of not only tribal citizens, but the community at large. We are here this evening because the tribe is concerned about plans to locate a new water tower in the most sensitive section of the tribe's ancestral lands, formerly known as Adamstown. As many of you know, historically the tribe resided in the Central Garage area, part of the county that is Adamstown. The proposed water tower would be located in the center of historic Adamstown and has a potential to disturb tribal ancestors who were laid to rest in the immediate vicinity. The tribe urges you to reject the proposed location and to instead adopt an alternate location suggested by the tribe that is in the interest of our tribe, and we will support the alternate location, but this water tower would come at the expense of the tribe's heritage and final resting places of our ancestors. So we certainly ask for your consideration of tribal rights and the dignity of our forefathers gone before for the last 420 years since first contact of the Europeans. And with that being said, I thank you all for bearing with me, and thank you, and I'll stay on the call.
Chief Adams, thank you so much for addressing the commissioners and expressing your concerns. And if you all feel a need to speak up when the agenda item comes and there's a dialogue, that's fine. We'll allow others to speak as well at that time too. Are there any, we still have our public comment period. Anyone else who would like to speak?
There are no other hands raised or requests in the chat room.
Miss Walker, just I see a post in the chat room that says *9 to raise your hand on the phone. In case, I don't know if it says that when you're on the phone. I usually participate by Zoom, so we'll give it a little more time if anyone on the phone would like to press *9. Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll close the public comment period. Thank you for your comments. Now we're into our public hearings. The first one up is Conditional Use Permit -04-21 King William Sand and Gravel. This is to modify a prior conditional use permit to expand mine area and to modify conditions under the existing CUP. Ms. Graham, could you please address the commission?
Yes, this is located off of Dabney's Mill. They have a current sand and gravel pit there now that they've been working for some time. They had a CUP that was done in 2007. So this request is to modify it by adding an additional 100.35 acres to the site. Right now, the time frame is about 25 years left on it, and this additional acreage will give them an additional 5 years, the lifespan of the sand and gravel pit. We do recommend it. They've gotten their approvals, approval letter from the Corps. They'll have to meet all of the Department of Mine and Minerals and energy requirements. We do recommend that it is approved with the 14 conditions that are in the packet.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Graham, do we have the applicant here who would be available to answer any of the planning commissioner questions?
We have several of them here. And they've also got a PowerPoint.
Okay,
If you want, we'll go ahead and put the PowerPoint up. I guess we're going to do it.
yep,
And then afterwards, they could speak during the PowerPoint or, and afterwards, any questions.
thank you. I think that's the way to go. If you all could proceed with the PowerPoint, that'd be great.
Okay. Let's get them unmuted. They're on that list that I gave you. Chris Height is one. Matthew Laird is another. Yeah. T. Laux is another. And that one, and Matt down there at the green square. Nope, that one. And then T. Laux. Okay. All right. Mark. I don't see. Yep.
I see some people coming online. Are you all unmuting?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Perfect, thank you.
Brett Johnson.
I didn't see him. Is Brett online with y'all tonight?
I believe so.
Okay, we'll find him.
We still waiting for folks?
If we've missed anyone, Mark, please let us know.
So we do have a few folks on standby who can answer questions, but I believe you have everybody who is who's going to be answering immediately. Mr. Kirkmeyer, Cliff Kirkmeyer, may be on the line. He's an executive with the applicant, and it may be good to have him unmuted. And also Matt Mounsey with the applicant. I think that he's, yeah, I see him that he's unmuted.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and Madam Chair, I'm ready whenever you are.
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, I'm Mark Cronenthal. I'm with the law firm of Roth Jackson, appearing for the applicant, King William Sand and Gravel. As you know, this property is located at the near the corner of 360 and Dabney's Mill Road. I want to thank Director Graham for the recommendation from the county administration. And we want to supplement as briefly as possible. There's a lot of information here, but we're interested in honoring your time and being as efficient as possible. So what I might propose we do, of course, we'll answer questions at any time throughout the presentation, but we do have a couple maps to show that will really help add some context. We have no notice of any folks who are in opposition, but in the event that there are some folks who have elected to sign on and oppose, we would ask for 3 minutes of rebuttal time. Tonight, we've got a couple folks who are experts on the line from the applicant. Of course, we have Chris Height, Matt Mounsey, and Cliff Kirkmeyer. We have our engineer from Coots Bryant, that's Brett Johnson. The environmental engineer, Thad Laux from Dewberry, is also here. And Dr. Matt Laird from the James River Institute for Archaeology. And Dr. Laird and his group have conducted, they're the project historian and archaeologist. And the owner of the property, the underlying property, Mr. Gene Campbell, is here in the event that there are any questions of the owner. This is, as you heard from the, I wonder if we can get to slide 2. So what maybe I don't have control of the slides. So what I'll do throughout as we talk, I'll kind of act as the host of the applicant team, and I'll suggest when folks might need to speak, who are from our panel, and suggest whenever slides might change and when we need to hop back and forth if there are any questions. So all the regulatory permitting, including the CUP from King William County, is complete for the existing site. And it's something that we've described, and you may recall, and we'll show you in a moment, that's described as 3 phases, phases 1, 2, and 3. We've also completed the improvements from the previous zoning case at the intersection of 360 and Dabney's Mill Road. And you all may be familiar that the mining operations have commenced already. They commenced in 2015. If we could go to slide 3, please. So this is a map of what's approved now, and sort of to orient yourself. If you're at the lower right-hand corner is 360 and Dabney's Mill Road. The oxbows that you see at the bottom of the map, that's the Pamunkey River. And what you'll see, sort of to keep everybody oriented, we're really going to focus in on phase 2 and what's to the west of phase 2. So the next map, if I could impose upon you to move to slide 4. What we're going to do first, we're going to just explain very briefly what some of the modification details are by the numbers. There's a lot of information here, but just really encapsulating it. This is an expansion of what's approved now. And we're going to show you that the reason behind the expansion is because it makes a lot of practical sense in the way that the operations are proceeding now. The land area that we're proposing to add is a little over 100 acres. And so Mr. Campbell is here because the vehicle by which we are using this land is a lease with Campbell Virginia Properties, LLC, and we are only leasing 100 acres of his 430-acre parcel. The excavation area will not be that entire parcel. It'll only be 78 acres. If I could impose upon you to change to slide 5, please. So this is a zoom in of the first map that you saw. And this shows what was phase 2. And you can see the operations sort of in the lower center, are in place. It is a surface mining. There's no blasting here. And Mr. Height will be able to explain a little bit more about some of the details there. And where you see sort of the aquamarine, the blue, the turquoise color, from that site, the mine, the reserves move to the west from that location. And throughout this entire operation, you'll see that the scale of the operation itself does not change. So there's no change in traffic. There's no change of what's being produced, but the operation itself moves to follow the reserves. So if we could change to the next slide, please. This is a little more complicated map because what it shows is what's approved in the solid red lines. You'll see, and Mr. Height and others will explain, there's a connector between phase 1 and phase 2 that's an internal connector. So there's no internal traffic has to get on Dabney's Mill Road or any of the other county or state roads. It's all internal. And so that connector inside is a great benefit to the folks and the community because all of the big trucks that are required for this can all stay inside. And this is the exhibit that will become the exhibit that to the case. If we could move to the next slide, please. Slide 7. So this sort of is a visual of how phase 2 will move towards phase 3. So again, not accessing any of the roads in the community, avoiding, and you'll hear from our environmental consultant, you'll be avoiding all of the protected areas, the environmental protected areas that you see on the map. And also, Dr. Laird will report, we did conduct a study that was not required you'll see that there are no significant archaeological or historical sites on the property. There were some things that were found, but they're not from any of the periods of significance that contribute to the importance and create the character of the property. And Dr. Laird can also share some of the interesting things about the CUP. If we could move to number 8, slide 8, and if Mr. Height, if you're on the line, I wonder if you could speak a little bit to the product that you're producing here, that there's no blasting, and sort of how the internal system works.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners, for an opportunity to speak with y'all. Just to give you a little history on King William Sand and Gravel, we are a family-owned and operated business. We purchased the King William Sand and Gravel name and the Queenfield and Manskin Lodge leases back in 2009. Started construction in 2015, and we actually started selling aggregates in the summer of 2016. So we basically, all the material is extracted by use of excavators and off-road haul trucks. The haul trucks either go to our plant, which you can see the picture back there, or we have a crossing conveyor that connects the Queenfield properties with the Manskin Lodge properties and moves the raw material across so that we don't have to put any on-road dump trucks to get feed to the plant. It all stays, like Mark was saying, internal. We produce 4 main products. We produce an A sand, or a concrete sand, that is used for ready-mix concrete and other concrete products such as precast and pre-stressed. We produce a B sand, which is an asphalt sand that is used in hot mix asphalt for road work, and a pea gravel, which is used in the bagging industry, such as Quickcrete and Sackcrete types of products, as well as being used to backfill fuel tank installations to help protect the underground tanks. We're currently selling about 400,000 tons of material each year, the bulk of which is sand. And like Mark said, we're not looking to add additional tonnage out the gate. So I would say, looking at our average daily truck count out the gate that hits 360 is about in the low 70s. So not looking to increase that either. We have 11 full-time employees, and we have worked the past 54,000 hours accident-free. We are particularly proud of this accomplishment. We stress safety. And if you use an industry-recognized standard multiplier, King William Sand creates another 80 jobs in support of its operations, whether that's commercial dump truck haulers, equipment manufacturers, vendors, and such. So we feel like we're a good producer, and we'd like to continue on.
Thank you, Chris. If there, we can pause for questions for Chris, or we can keep moving and sort of gather questions at the end. But Chris will be online along with Cliff and Matt from the applicant. I wonder, Madam Director, if I could impose upon you to unmute Thad Locks. And while we're doing that, I'll just give a brief summary of the environmental. If we could also move to slide 9, the environmental text slide. The environmental team has been on board since 2007. So, we have the same folks who have been working and coming to you and providing information to you since that time. The existing CUP, all of those delineations are complete. Obviously, the operation is proceeding there, and all of the resource protection areas have been identified on the existing operation and on what we've been calling the Campbell expansion for this site. And I wonder, Thad, if you're online, if you might give a couple remarks and tell us what's going on slide 10. Ma'am, if I could impose upon you to move to slide 10, which is a map of the site.
Yes, certainly, Mark. Good evening, everyone. Thad Laux here. Yeah, so what we're looking at here is the official waters of the U.S. Delineation Map that was prepared for the project. You'll see that the approximate area is about 100 acres. We identified 2 wetland areas, one that bisects the property, and then one along the southern boundary. They total about 10 acres in size. With the current mine plan coming from the west of phase 2, we will not impact any wetlands for this project. We prepared documentation and sent that to the Corps of Engineers for confirmation, and they issued a no permit required for this project.
And I wonder, Thad, if you could describe how the topsoil is reserved and then placed back on top so that the property can still be used consistent with the the zoning designation.
Sure, and I think others can speak to this as well, but yeah, with mining, typically you'll remove the topsoil, obviously outside of the wetland areas. That topsoil will be utilized for screening purposes, and then the mining will occur, and then that topsoil will be utilized to restore the land back to the way it was, and utilized to grow vegetation.
Excellent. All right, thank you, sir. To Madam Chair, Mr. Laux will be online and available if there are any additional questions at the end of our presentation. Moving on to the archaeological and historical, if I could impose upon us to turn to slide 11. Dr. Laird has, in his group, have been involved with the project also since the beginning. He's with James River Institute for Archaeology. And I do want to make sure that everybody knows that this is we know that we're in King William County. We know that we're in an area that has archaeological and historic resources that go back into prehistory. And we're very sensitive to the history of the historic tribes in the area. And we're also very sensitive to the history and the physical history of enslaved persons that may survive at the site. And so Dr. Laird is going to share a little bit about the programmatic agreement that's in place for the existing site, and then the voluntary research and work that we did about the Campbell expansion, the things that we found there, and why they don't relate to the historic character of the area and the property. And Dr. Laird, if I could impose upon you to share whenever a slide has to be changed.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark, and good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. As one of the owners of the James River Institute for Archaeology, I've been involved personally with this project for the past 14 years. And a milestone of this was in 2014, a programmatic agreement was signed between the Corps of Engineers, King William Sand and Gravel, the Department of Historic Resources, and a number of Indian tribes. I'm glad to see Chief Adams and the representatives of the Upper Mattaponi tribe. They've certainly been involved since 2014, along with the Delaware tribe, the Pamunkey tribe, and the Mattaponi tribe of Indians as well. Now, this programmatic agreement was signed as a requirement of Section 106 of the National Preservation Act, which was required because the mining project required wetland permitting from the Corps of Engineers. So the programmatic agreement, or the PA, has basically been the roadmap for how King William Sand and Gravel treats, protects, preserves, and interprets its cultural resources within its property. There are a number of aspects of this. We have 2 standing historic properties that are adjacent to the mining area, the Queenfield and Manskin Lodge properties. In order to protect the historic view sheds, a series of earthen berms have been built surrounding the mining area to protect the historic view of those 2 properties. And if you could advance the slide for me, please. Archaeological studies have also been an important component of the programmatic agreement and how the historic resources have been managed over time. So since 2008, our firm, the James River Institute for Archaeology, has conducted phase 1 archaeological survey of over 600 acres associated with the property. And in the course of that, we've identified 11 different archaeological sites spanning a very lengthy period from prehistoric Native American sites through 18th century sites, enslaved African American sites from the 19th century on up through the 20th century. Now, everyone who's been a signatory to the programmatic agreement has had an opportunity to review these studies and comment on them. And in consultation with all these groups, it's been determined that 7 out of the 11 sites meet the criteria for listing in the National Register of Historic Places, or the benchmark for significance of archaeological sites. And I have to say, it's been wonderful working with William Sand and Gravel, because all of those 7 significant sites have been protected in their entirety. And we have worked on treatment plans with the Corps of Engineers and the Department of Historic Resources to ensure that those sites are protected. There have been some instances where we've been able to avoid them entirely, or design around them, or use intentional burial in order to get roadways across them. But these have all been approved by all the signatories of the programmatic agreement. And so stewardship of the archaeological resources has really been very important. Now, it was determined early on with the Campbell expansion by the Corps of Engineers that this additional acreage would not be included in the existing programmatic agreement. And so the stipulations of the PA don't officially apply to the expansion area. However, King William Sand and Gravel, in the tradition of good stewardship of their resources, contracted with my firm to do phase 1 archaeological survey of that property to meet Virginia Department of Historic Resource standards. And we conducted that in 2020. And we identified 2 small archaeological sites which date to the early 20th century. These are probably tenant farmsteads on the property based on the research that we've done. And it has been our recommendation that those 2 sites do not meet the eligibility requirements for the National Register. So no further investigation of those is warranted. No Native American resources of any kind were found on the Campbell properties. So that sort of brings us to where we are. And I just would emphasize that that study was done voluntarily and kind of preemptively on their behalf.
I wonder, Madam Director, if you could have us advance to slide 14. And then Dr. Laird, is that on the right, shows the investigations?
Yeah, the 2 archaeological sites that were identified are highlighted in white: 44 KW 0332 and 333. The other locations, those are just individual artifact finds, so of no significance. But those are the location and the relatively small size of the 2 20th century sites that we found. Just to draw your attention, on the left-hand side of the screen, that black and white aerial image is from 1967. You can see that there were some historic structures, barns, that were immediately to the west of the mining area, but those are going to be avoided entirely.
Thank you, Dr. Laird. Madam Director, if I might impose upon you to advance to slide 15. We finished our presentation. We're very grateful for your time and attention. And I did see a question on the chat that I believe Mr. Laux was able to answer about the reserve of the topsoil that can be replaced. And we of course, we've got our whole team here, and we're very glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the applicant's thorough application and this presentation. I'm a visual person. It's always very helpful to see, to have a presentation like this to provide context. The way that we proceed in terms of the questions is the planning commissioners have reviewed the application, and now we've seen the presentation. And so planning commissioners now will have an opportunity to ask questions, make comments, and we hope that you all will have to identify the specific people on your team to respond to those questions. So I'm going to open it up to my fellow commissioners to identify any concerns that they have or questions that they have.
Madam Chair, I had quite a number of questions, but the tour given by Mr. Height and his team answered all the questions that I had except for one, and Mr. Kronethal took care of that one yesterday, asking about condition number 2, I think it was, asking what the exhibit was. So
I had the same question.
Yes, and you have some folks who want to speak, and they'll have the opportunity when we open the public hearing in just a few moments. So
Yes, that's right.
So Mr. Height and all your team, thank you so much for the extensive time you gave us and the thorough application and the job you guys have done. I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Don Wagner. I had toured the project with the applicant and his team. I've been through the report pretty thoroughly, and I really have no questions. I think they've done a very good job of explaining, and the past history of this project has been very good. I don't think we have had any problems. One of the concerns I had was possibly having a traffic signal at Route 604 and 360. VDOT ruled against that, and after reviewing everything, I agree with VDOT's ruling. At some future date, we may have to revisit that, but certainly not at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Well, we can interactive discussion. If there are individuals that are attending this meeting that have questions, I do see some folks have posed questions in the chat. Maybe best to, if your questions have not been answered, to unmute yourself if you're on the phone, or to raise your hand in the chat feature so you have an opportunity to speak.
Hi, this is Marion Werkheiser. Is it appropriate for me to ask a question?
Sure.
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm an attorney for the Upper Mattaponi tribe, and I focus on cultural heritage law, so this is quite fascinating for me. I had a couple of questions about the historic and archaeological survey. I'm curious if the consulting firm has spoken with the tribe about techniques for identifying areas that are of ethnographic importance to them, and also areas where burials may be located. In a project like this with so much earth and ground disturbance, I know the tribe would be very concerned if there were any inadvertent discoveries of buried ancestors in this area. So what sorts of safeguards are you putting in place for that possibility? Thank you.
Yeah, I can speak to this. In terms of the programmatic agreement, there's certainly a clause in the programmatic agreement which requires cessation of work if there is inadvertent discovery of human remains of any time period. And so that is certainly a component of the existing programmatic agreement. I think that would certainly apply, even though the Corps of Engineers has not determined that the Campbell expansion would not be included within the programmatic agreement. I think I can speak for King William Sand and Gravel that they would want to implement those same procedures in that particular case. In terms of discussions with the Upper Mattaponi or any of the other tribes, we've not had any direct discussions about whether this particular area might be of particular significance to us, but our archaeological survey did not identify any Native American remains in this area at all. But we would certainly be open if people had information that was specific to this particular property. We would certainly be open to receiving that and considering it.
So just to follow up, there's no legal requirement, you're saying, that they actually look for these finds because they've decided to avoid the wetlands so that they can avoid compliance with the Army Corps permitting process. So is that the type of requirement that this planning commission could implement?
I think that this is Mark Cronenthal. I think that's I don't think that's quite an accurate summary. So we have affirmatively investigated the site for historic remains of every type, and there is just a general under general law. Anytime that you discover human remains, you do have to stop operations, even without the programmatic agreement. I used to manage a family farm that had a battlefield on it, and we frequently had to stop operations and wait for the equivalent of the county coroner to come to the site. So these protections already exist in very many layers.
Thank you. I would just like to say that the tribe would welcome a conversation about that, because the techniques for identifying those inadvertent finds can vary greatly on projects like this, and we would want to make sure that the adequate monitoring is happening. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Okay. Floor is still open for anyone who has questions or comments. We've got a team for the applicant. So if you do, please feel free to raise your hand, speak up. You'll see anyone wanting to speak?
No, ma'am.
I'll just give it a couple seconds. Looking through the chat. Okay. So we've had a comment and question, an observation. Council for the Mattaponi tribe. Do we, planning commissioners, have additional comments or questions that we would like to pose to the group?
I don't have any further questions beyond what was covered at the extensive tour we got.
Okay, right. Thank you for participating in that, Mr. Breeden. It's helpful. Okay, so we've got this proposal, and I would ask, I was confused by where the exhibit is as well. Could you all tell me what the exhibit is? Because I went through and I couldn't find it. And that is replacing a number of the conditions that are being removed.
Yes, ma'am. That's a great question.
Okay.
So if you're in your latest agenda, page
Yes.
173.
Okay.
And also on the slides, it is slide 6. So slide 6 is zoomed in and won't have the cartouche and all the information that's contained in sort of the boxes underneath. But if you're at page 173 of what the most up-to-date agenda is and staff report, you will see that exhibit. And what this is intended to do is it's intended to reflect, the realities of what's on the ground now, because we've made the improvements that are contained in the old case.
Right.
And this map, while complicated for a complicated site, reflects the implementation of those improvements, as they are. And so that's intended. It would, as we all were, and working and talking with staff as we were reviewing the sort of how the application should work, the mechanics of it, it seemed odd to have requirements listed that we've already implemented and paid for and done.
Right. So you're just updating the conditions.
Right. So this shows this shows phases 1, 2, and 3 that you've already improved with the improvements. and it shows the Campbell expansion. So this is intended to be the sort of the comprehensive replacement of some of those things that are outdated because they've been done.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I missed that, but I also, it's in really tiny print.
I know I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. It's okay.
One of these, there's a lot of information for the case.
It is. Okay, so, Mr.
I'm amazed you're able to find it so quickly.
It's only page 173. Okay, so Mr. Greenwood or Ms. Height, do you all have anything to add? Because I think if not, then a motion may be appropriate.
Yeah, Madam Chair, that was exactly the thing that you and I discussed earlier today. And like I said, I didn't catch it with going through it the second time. He went right to 173. And of course, here it is. That's what I was looking for. So,
that's great.
Like I said, I had to get the glass out, but that's what I was looking for. That's the only question I had. And thanks everybody. And thank you, the group, all of your group, for doing such a thorough job. And I love that the book is in color. That helps a whole lot. Half the time it's not color, so we can't tell what's going on. This is excellent. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, Don Wagner.
Yes.
I would request that the applicant go back to their traffic impact analysis and ask for a review of any accidents that might have occurred at that intersection as a result of the entrance, as a result of the trucks entering Route 360. And if they find significant reason to, perhaps, in other words, they can get a traffic accident study from the Virginia State Police. So if they could review that and see if we're having any problems there. If there are any problems, then I would recommend they consider reducing the speed limit through that area. Thank you.
Thank you. So are you requesting just this? It's not an additional condition, it's an additional request?
Just make it an additional request.
Okay. Ms. Height?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did not make the tour of the facility. However, I do appreciate the presentation tonight and all the information that was included in our packet. You asked the question that I had relative to the exhibit. So I don't have anything else, questions right now.
Okay, wonderful. All right, well, we are certainly, go ahead, Mr. Breeden.
Madam Chair, I would like to add, and I hate to make a big deal about it, but because it's referenced in the conditions, I would like to have that 173 be added as the exhibit to the conditions themselves, if for no other reason than for clarity's sake for folks looking at this after the fact, years down the road.
So are you proposing kind of like us an exhibit, actually attach it to the conditions?
Conditions, yes.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And so at this time, I'd like to make that recommendation to the board that they approve this conditional use permit with the conditions as modified by the applicant and by staff, and with the addition of the exhibit on page 173. And that's my motion, Madam Chair.
That's wonderful. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Wonderful. Okay, Ms. Cole, will you take roll call on this motion, please?
Ms. Height?
Aye.
Mr. Wagner?
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood?
Aye.
Mr. Breeden?
Aye.
And Chairman Rhodes?
Aye. Thank you very much. The motion is amended and proposed has passed. We're grateful to you all for your excellent presentation. Thank you. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up on our agenda is conditional use permit -05-21, applicant James Chester. It's my understanding this is to construct an accessory dwelling on the Chester property. Ms. Graham, can you please provide us some background, please?
And Mr. Chester should be available tonight.
Okay, good.
This is at 3806 Custis Mill Pond Road. And I do have PowerPoint, small one. It shows the mobile home that he wants, a floor plan of the mobile home that he wants to put there. This is for one of his family members that he needs to have close to them so they can help take care of them. He has had all the soil work done for his septic and well. However, he has not gotten the approval back yet from the health department. Should not be any problem with it though.
Okay.
I'll run through this real quick. I know that you have all these pictures in your packet, but for the people at home to just kind of give them an idea of what we're looking at here. You could change it.
No, just this option.
And this is an aerial off of our GIS that just kind of gives you an overview showing that it's pretty wooded around the property. And this is showing that everything in the vicinity is zoned AC. These are some pictures that Krista took for me where we posted the sign. The location should be up around the side and right in front of that storage shed that you see. Okay. It's just a little bit closer of a picture, right? As you can see, woods on both sides, so it's pretty secluded from the adjacents. Okay. And this is the floor plan.
Okay.
So staff's recommendation that it that planning approve this with a condition that it is occupied by a family member only.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Graham. We appreciate it. We probably would like to unmute Mr. or Mrs. Chester for the opportunity to address the Planning Commission and answer any questions that the commissioners may have.
I talked with him tonight. I know he was going to be on there. Yeah.
If he's on a phone number, it's not a number.
And again, *9 is a way to unmute if you are on the phone.
4631 would be the last digits. There we go.
Do you have them?
So with them being on the phone, it doesn't need to do anything.
Raise his hand.
Yes, ma'am. I'm here.
Hello, Mr. Chester. How are you?
I'm well, ma'am. And yourself?
I'm doing great tonight. Thank you for coming this evening. Why don't you introduce yourself and what you're proposing, if you would, and commissioners may have some questions for you.
Yes, ma'am. My name's James Chester, and I'm proposing a single-person dwelling on my property for my mother-in-law, so that she can stay closer to us because of medical needs.
Okay. Well, I know I have some questions. Commissioners may have some questions. Do we want to open it up? Do the commissioners have any thoughts on whether we open it up for questions for the public first, and then we can take it from there?
This is Don Wagner. I would suggest we hear whatever the public might have to say,
Yeah.
if there are any concerns.
I would agree. So that's what we're going to do this evening. If members of the public participating this evening, you've seen the proposal. If you have questions about the proposal, and would like to ask Mr. Chester, now is your opportunity.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just a point of clarification, when we probably should open these up formally since they are public hearings. You probably should open the public hearing and then have the people speak, and then we should have closed the last one also. So that's just a point of clarification.
Okay, thank you. It doesn't require a motion though, does it?
No, no.
Okay, so we have our public hearing for CUP-05-21 for the Chester application. Now it's open. Thank you, Mr. Greenwood.
Thank you. Madam Chair, may we ask questions now too, or are we just doing public right now?
We were going to open it up to the public, allow them an opportunity, and then we can chime in. So why don't we give it? It's taking people a while to get unmuted.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So we'll give it a few seconds. Give it 15 seconds. Okay, last call for members of the public to chime in or ask questions. Thank you. Okay, so the opportunity that has closed, the public has no comments. I would now open it to the commissioners to ask any questions they have of Mr. Chester.
Madam Chair, Don Wagner. Just to lead in, we don't have a site plan for this proposal. We do have some pictures that provide some fairly good clarification, but the applicant had provided a sketch showing where his house was and showing where the dwelling would be. And I applaud Mr. Chester for planning to provide such a facility for his mother-in-law. But we also want everything to be in compliance with reasonable parts of the ordinance. I noticed that two things. The trailer is shown in front of the house, not in front of the house, but looks like in front of the shed, down close to the well. We don't generally allow structures in front of the main dwelling, and I would ask Mr. Chester if there is any way he can move that location of that trailer so that the front end of the trailer is behind the front of the house. It doesn't have to be in the backyard, but possibly someplace in front of the shed or beside the shed. And the other thing I would ask is that what is the distance from the well or the shed to the property line on the left side? The sketch that we have indicates a 50-foot easement. So how close are we to that easement? Mr. Chester,
would you like me to respond now, sir?
Yes, please.
In regards to your first question, sir, the dwelling will be behind the home. If you're standing on the road frontage and the easement is on your left, the sketch that was provided is pretty tight. If you see where the shed is, the modular home will actually be closer to centered near the shed, and it'll be behind the house, or it'll be behind the front of the line of the house, and it will be from where the well is located, it should be 70, I believe it was 73 feet towards the back of the property, away from the road. And if the modular home it's 14 wide by 32 long, and it would be placed about 20, I believe it's 28 feet from that 50-foot wide easement, and it would be 7 to 12 feet from the shed, and we are planning on removing the shed from its current spot, and that would be accessible parking in my driveway. The driveway actually is pre-existing driveway, goes from the side of the home to the other side of the small shed, so it would be fronting right on the small mobile home. And I also plan on adding additional Leland cypress to shield the frontage of the mobile home from the main road, and some landscaping. I hope that answers your question, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chester, thank you for that. That very well answers my question, and so I look forward to working with you on this.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time.
Other questions, please, from the commissioners?
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, but I'm totally lost now. I'm either don't have that page in my book, or I'm not seeing what everybody's talking about. The only sketch I have is the floor plan of the mobile unit, and I have a plat that shows a row of houses, but I don't see Chester in any of them. It's Carter, Porsche Construction, Baker Heating and Air. And what page exactly are we on?
I think, Ms. Graham, if you could help us with that, because it does have the wrong tax map number on the parcel. And I was a little bit confused by it. And of course, it does show the dwelling unit to be located in front of the house, which is not depicted. So, Ms. Graham, do we have a schematic?
They have a subdivision plat in here, but it wasn't very legible. Before he would be able to get any building permits, he would have to submit a plat that is done by a surveyor that will show all existing structures, the proposed structure, primary and reserve locations, well locations, setbacks from all property lines.
Okay, so I just want to be clear, the schematic that I'm looking at that Vice Chair Greenwood is pointing out shows a new dwelling which is located in front of the shed and immediately in front of Mill Pond Road. So are we saying that that is not the correct location then? Is that
that is what it shows, but when I talked with Mr. Chester, he told me it was going to be right in front of the shed.
But that's not what I'm understanding, because the shed is a shed in front of the house. It looks like can we go back to
go back a couple pictures.
I'm on the thing.
Right there.
So if it's in front of the shed, it's still in front of the house. Are we talking behind the shed or in front of the shed?
It'll be behind the front line of the house, so it'll be on the side.
He said he was going to remove the shed, so I guess it's going to be where that shed is.
No.
No,
I think it's
not
to
at
the
all.
left of the picture.
Go one ahead. 4. Now go 4. Go 3. No, all right, go back.
Page 185 is the page we're all talking about, where the sketch is really, it shows the dwelling way out near the road, and I see what you're talking about. That's Chester property. It's not Carter property, it's Chester property. Okay, that's.
Yeah. So go another one, if you could show us the subdivision plat that shows the 50-foot ingress.
Go go back up to
One more, I think.
3.
I have a picture.
Other direction.
It's not that one.
Well, you could show it there.
Ladies,
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, could I have a second to speak, please?
Sure.
If you're looking at the front of the home and you see that the zoning sign and the vehicle in the driveway at the road front, if you're staring straight ahead at the shed, the proposed home is going to the left of that shed, half centered on where the shed site is. So it's well behind my home, up into the tree line between the easement and the shed, not in front of the shed. And the shed will be removed within a month and a half. I've got to relocate it to the complete behind the house on another part of the property, but it's not going in front of the shed in my driveway. It would be way off to your left if you're staring at the house and the shed in the picture.
Where it slopes down into the woods?
That spot where I'm proposing is flat before it dives down towards the easement. And that's why I picked it, because it was closer to my well and it was a good spot between the well, the drain field, and my septic tank. But I was told by the gentleman that did the soil survey that the well was deep enough. It's an artesian well over 360 feet, but I would have to put a small above or below ground septic and add on to my drain field. It would be easier for me. He said I could attach to the new one, but it would be more cost effective and time effective if I put in a smaller unit for the single person dwelling.
Thank you. Ms. Height, do you have questions, other plan commissioners?
I do have a couple of questions.
Good.
I wanted to ask if the mobile home was going to be a permanent installation and not movable once it's in place, or the intent is not that it would be moved later.
Do I answer that?
Yes, Mr. Chuck.
Yes, ma'am. It can be. It originally will be moved in by a transport truck and then set on columns that are in the ground on piers, and then it will have siding placed on it and decks to gain entrance and exit the dwelling, but it can be moved. I'm really not sure what the question.
Thank you. That answered what the question was. I just wanted to make sure that it was, even though it could be moved, your intent is that it be a permanent installation and all the siding or decks or whatever that was going to be added would somewhat prevent it from you moving it once it was placed on the property.
Oh, yes, ma'am. I fully intend on it to be a firmament on the land so that it doesn't move while she's staying there. I mean, after she's no longer in need of the property, then it could be. But while she's with me, it's going to stay right where it's at. Ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chester. I appreciate it. And I do have a question also for Mrs. Graham. I did leave a voicemail message for Mrs. Graham earlier today to make sure that the notification that was being sent to Bunny Brown was sent to the correct address, because it lists the 3806 Custis Mill Pond Road as the mailing address for that notification to be sent, which I believe is the same address as the applicant. Is that correct?
Her letter did come back.
That's a good question, Ms. Height.
Okay, and I just had one more question to ask Mrs. Graham and staff if there were any questions or concerns received by the planning department related to the conditional use permit.
Not on this one.
Ms. Height.
Thank you.
Okay. So my concern is as follows. What I'm looking at is, for me, a great level of uncertainty about the location in terms of something concrete for us to take a vote on. What I'd like, what would have been ideal, is to have had the sketch that contemplated the removal of the shed, the exact location of the proposed structure tied to property lines. And so I'm not entirely comfortable with the application as it stands in light of these additional developments. And so if we moved forward with a vote, then there would be a number of conditions that I would propose because I'm unclear. So I'm opening that up. I don't know what that entails in terms of having a schematic that actually reflects the location, the distance from the road, et cetera. Since it is now, I think we would all agree that we probably like the new location as proposed better than as what is reflected in the current application. But I don't know what we're voting on other than just the discussion we've had. So I'm going to ask my fellow commissioners to tell me their thoughts about that.
Madam Chair, if I may, in the past, what we would do is we would propose additional conditions, and assuming that the applicant was okay with them, we would make that a part of our recommendation to the Board of Supervisors.
I'm okay with that. Yes.
And from what I heard, the only one that I have concern with is that no part of the structure be further forward than the front of the house. And I didn't hear anything beyond that. They'll be doing other things to accommodate that need. And that's something I think that you and Mr. Wagner and probably everybody had some concerns with. If there are others, though, we can certainly propose them and go from there. So.
So that is one thought. There are two additional that I'd like to propose to the group for consideration. One is, I know that there is, and I love the idea of landscaping. I don't know that that actually would be my requirement, but I would not want the removal of the existing tree buffer that appears to be located to the side of the shed. Because I think the property next door, there's an egress is undeveloped currently, but a house could go up. My other thought is, and I don't know historically what the Planning Commission has done, but is consider whether it would be appropriate, since it is more of a temporary structure, to have the conditional use permit expire after a period of years for reconsideration by the Planning Commission. I don't know whether that's a 5-year period, a 7-year period, or what have you, so the Planning Commission can reassess and consider the condition of the structure, et cetera, since it is more of a temporary structure, and I don't know historically. So those would be my two additional considerations as conditions.
Madam Chair, Ms. Graham indicated that a site plan would be required. So as a part of that site plan, I would suggest a condition that does two things. First, it requires the facilities to be, the front of the facilities to be moved beyond the front face of the house, which Mr. Chester has indicated would be done even further back. And also I would recommend that the distance to the side lot line or the easement line be the minimum required for residential development in the AC zoning. And in addition to that, I would recommend a condition that the facility shall be removed within 60 days of the date on which the temporary health care structure was last occupied by an impaired family member receiving services or assistance.
So another alternative to the condition. Okay.
If we had that condition, I would like to allow a little more time than that. That's not a lot of time, and the likelihood is that there would be other more larger concerns that they're moving the individual to an assisted living facility or something else. They might need a little more time than that. So this is a temporary type of structure. This is not it's a mobile home, but it looks like a fairly sturdy building. Is that not correct?
It is.
It is more than capable of being a permanent structure. It's a micro modular home. It has its own heating, air conditioning, its own electrical capability, its own plumbing capability. It's basically a tiny house. It's 573 square feet. It's pretty strong stuff.
I thought it was 400 and some, 440 or so from the measurements I got. Madam Chair, if I may, for the ordinance as we move forward, this type of housing is something I think we need to spend a little more time on, and because we're going to be getting a lot of these sorts of things. Well, not we, everyone around the whole country will be dealing with this in a much larger number, and I think for the ordinance itself, we need to find a way to make this easier on the applicants while at the same time protecting the community around them. So I'm reluctant to ask this applicant to remove it when it appears to be a fairly substantial building. The other changes proposed by Mr. Wagner, I can fully support. I'm hoping that the applicant is already saying that he would be doing that.
Madam Chair, if I may, I understand Mr. Breeden's concerns, but I don't think we want a permanent livable structure on the site. If Mr. Chester wanted to convert that to some other use other than living quarters, then I think we could consider that. But as it is right now, it is living quarters, and once there is no further need for that as living quarters, then it should not be continued as a use for living space.
Yeah, that's, and I agree with Mr. Breeden in terms of providing certainty and something we need to look at, but the conditional use permit is because of the need for the current circumstances. So once those current circumstances expire, that is my concern, is all of a sudden you have a lot with two homes on it. And so what do? It's got a conditional use permit that is not being used by an immediate family member. How do you address that circumstance? One way would be where you're reassessing and ultimately potential removing, or as Mr. Wagner said, providing a time frame for the removal of the structure.
Madam Chair, I'd like to say something too, but like I said, we're sort of getting into a segue of a whole new issue here. So that means if we're going to do that on this one, anybody that comes in for a conditional use permit, are we going to go back after them and tell them to rip off the addition that they made for a conditional use permit just because their family member no longer needs it?
Well, I think that's the question, right? I think that's a question, and I'm not saying I like it, but I'm just saying once the need is no longer there, then, and we have a condition that says it's for immediate, for family use only. I guess it doesn't have to be for that particular family, but they'd be in violation of the conditional use permit if they rented it out to someone else, correct?
Correct, yes. But they could do that in another conditional use permit for attachment that's attached to the house too. We can't prove that they wouldn't rent out a room if it's even if it was attached to their house. And what are we going to do? Go around and find out?
No, but there's much less of a likelihood that someone's going to rent a portion of an accessory dwelling if it's actually attached to the house. This is actually a separate house that is not attached to the dwelling. That's my observation with it. If it's attached to the dwelling, it's unlikely you're going to rent to a stranger. Not impossible.
Right. Well, that's my point. Just like the last one we just passed with that garage that was a separate building, we turned it into an accessory dwelling, and we didn't put a condition on that. As soon as the accessory dwelling was not being used, they had to rip it down and turn it back into a garage. That's what I'm saying. We're opening up something for this one applicant that we're not applying on all other applicants. What makes this one different than that garage that the last lady turned into? It was a standalone garage that she turned into a bedroom, bathroom, living room, and it was a conditional use permit for her mother-in-law. What's the difference in that and this modular?
I hear you. So is your recommendation, Mr. Greenwood, that we not have that condition, but we have the conditions for the dwelling to be back from the face of the front of the home and to address the distance from the easement with respect to the minimum requirements that we would otherwise have?
Yes, ma'am. Like I said, I'd like I said, that sketch that shows the site plan of all the related or the neighboring properties. I'd like that sketch drawn on the full map, like on page 198, that shows just his parcel all blown up, but show exactly where stuff is now. Show that 50-foot easement on the left, show maybe where the pine tree line is, show the actual house, show dotted lines where the shed is, and show actually where the house is going.
Right.
That would see
So
more of
that,
a blow-up.
yeah, that will happen during the site plan process, but it will happen after we take our vote this evening.
Right, but like I said, I think we should make it like the Mr. Breed and Mr. Wagner were saying, make that a condition that has to be done. And I think it does. Like Sherry said, I think that has to be done anyway. But if we want to make sure, put it as a conditional condition in there just to make sure that it's in there.
All right.
Madam
Well,
Chair, I respectfully disagree with Mr. Greenwood's comment that we should allow this to stay on the property. Section 86-45 or 50 states that there shall be no more than one residential dwelling on any parcel in the county. When we allow a separate dwelling to be used for residential purposes, then we're violating that section of the code. The intent that we've had some discussions about was that an attached dwelling, as Madam Chair stated, that's not likely to be rented out, and we certainly should have, when we approve those, we should certainly have a statement in there that once it's no longer needed for a family member, it would remain as a part of the dwelling, but may not be rented, leased, or whatever. A facility like this, and I'm not, again, I appreciate what the Chesters are doing, but a facility like this is not intended to be a permanent facility. It's only intended to be there as a temporary facility for family care.
Madam Chair, right. I disagree completely because like I said, if we did that, then what we did with that garage, turning it into a separate house, was illegal too. So why did we do that?
I don't think we did that, Mr. Greenwood.
Yes, we did. We allowed that garage to be turned into an extra dwelling, a separate house with bathroom, bedroom, living room, and it's a separate building.
It was an attachment to the house.
It was not attached. It was a separate building with stairs on the outside that had an upstairs, and we told them not to finish the upstairs.
No, I won't.
Well,
you don't remember it.
I don't, honestly, if that's the case, that's a case. If it's not, I don't know that we're going to resolve it this evening.
Madam Chair.
Right.
Yes, right.
I'm in agreement with Mr. Greenwood. I don't think that it should be added for the dwelling to be removed with regards to previous requests for similar dwellings, additional dwellings for care of family members. I totally do not agree with a 60-day time frame. I'm not sure that I would even be open, but I will throw this out there. If y'all wanted to put a condition that if Mr. Chester and his family were to sell the property, that conditional use permit for the additional dwelling would cease to exist, and therefore that additional dwelling would have to be removed from the property. But we have not asked of it to be done on other similar requests.
Right. Okay. Well, so we've got hearty disagreement, which is not surprising. I would like to see a buffer. I have concerns about the 5-acre lot size and what people are seeing. I have concerns about the letter being returned, not getting to one of the neighbors. And so how would the commissioners feel about having a required buffer that buffers from visibility to the extent possible? I mean, obviously it's not gonna, hide it. I don't think we need a wall there, but of landscape.
I believe
Madam
Mr.
Chair.
Chester said he was going to plant a couple of trees in front of the dwelling.
Sure.
May I have a moment to speak, please?
Sure.
My neighbor directly to the left of my plot plan has a garage with a home built on top of it beside his house, less than 100 feet from his house, and you can see it from the road. The gentleman who lives on the lot directly across from me, to his right is another home with a apartment garage that's clearly visible from the street. My situation or my actual application, you would not be able to see but maybe an eighth of the actual structure from the road, and it would completely be closed by 3 sides on trees. I don't know if that makes any difference. We tried to get an addition put on the end of the home, and it was well in excess of $100,000. And this modular home, which is actually meets all the building codes, hurricane codes, drought codes, it even has a wind resistance measurement. It's pretty nice. It doesn't look like it looks better than a garage, which is actually bigger than our dwelling, and it's smaller than a 3-bay garage with an apartment on top, which is what's on the adjacent properties. I'm not quite following some of the things that are being stated because I don't have the codes and facts that you do on paper in regards to the county codes, regulations, and processes. But I do believe that I can provide a more accurate site plan, and I can assure you that I have no problem planning additional road deferring obstacles or road breaking obstacles to the structure. I've already planted 16 Leland cypresses down my road frontage that also block this, that are immediately adjacent to the picture where the the assessing individual took a picture where the site sign is. Immediately to the left of the shed, right at the road frontage, I have 16 Leland cypresses that are well over 12 feet round. Also blocking from road view, which the other properties around, adjacent parcels around me do not have. So I'm trying. Are there special requirements that I need to meet?
Well, that's part of the condition, and appreciate your input. That's very helpful to understand what's surrounding in your circumstances, and we appreciate that. So part of this process is that the planning, because this is not ordinarily permitted under the ordinance, that the Planning Commission can impose conditions that it deems necessary if it is going to move forward with the approval. So that's what we're talking about right now. The current proposal that has been made by staff is that the condition would be that the accessory dwelling shall be occupied by immediate family only. So what's on the table now is an additional condition that the house be moved back, as we discussed and you've agreed to. It meet all site, setback requirements, certainly. And then the party debate about whether the structure should be removed. And now we've been discussing about whether there would be a buffer, which it sounds like you would be open to in terms of visibility. So in any event, I mean, we've talked about it a lot. I don't know if a motion is appropriate right now.
Madam Chair, if I can, one more thing. As far as the removal, the condition already says the accessory dwelling shall be occupied by immediate family only. So, so I think that protects the county. I saw the lot. Again, it'll be hardly noticeable from the road with all the trees that are there. It's a largely rural area with neighbors not that far around, very quiet neighborhood. Other than making sure it meets the requirement to be behind, and no further closer to the front than the house itself, I'm not sure I can support any further conditions.
Okay. All right.
Madam Chair, if I may, I have seen a number of properties around the county where garages were built or residences were built over top of garages. I'm not sure how they're being used. I don't know how they got approved, but nonetheless, in this situation, because we're in a situation between ordinances, then I would recommend that we go ahead with the conditions that we've talked about, except for what I proposed about removing it 60 days afterwards. What Mr. Breeden said is it would be for family members only. I don't think that's exactly the intent, but I would go along with that as long as that condition is there. And as long as he meets all the other conditions we had talked about, it would be my recommendation to move ahead. But perhaps we want to table this until our next meeting, and so that we can make sure we get the conditions correct.
Well, we can, I don't know how that works. I think we can certainly move forward with a motion. I don't know the current circumstance, and craft the conditions if anyone's in a position to do that so that we don't delay. Because it sounds like we've come to some agreement in terms of how to treat this application.
Madam Chair, as I wanted to point out to you and the fellow board members, on page 199, it does show, as Mr. Chester said, his lot is fully wooded. And like you can see, the whole left side, the whole front side is already wooded. So if you're driving down the road, he only has a small entrance between the trees. You can't even see his house from the road anyway. So if he does put a few more bufferage trees in there near the front, which he said he already put in some Leland cypresses, I think that should be adequate for the bufferage. And if, as long as we come up, which he has to have anyway, if he blows up that actual site plan that shows it larger and shows the dotted line for the easement, shows exactly where the house is, the well, those kind of things, which has to be shown, I think we should move forward too. And
yeah, I would agree. The site plan is going to do that, so we don't have to tell any
right.
believe that we have to say a site plan is a requirement. I don't think we need to say, show the
Exactly.
dotted lines. It's all going to be done. I think the conditions are in terms of where the facility is going to be located. The dwelling will be located behind the front of the house, a plane to the front of the house. And that potentially we put in that, and I don't know that Mr. Breeden is in agreement with this, but yeah, he's shaking his head. I was saying a buffer. So that is a condition right now, is immediate family occupancy only, which does protect the county, I would agree. And then the location of the facility. Those are the two conditions. Do we have?
As Mr. Breeden said, that's already in the conditional use permit. We don't have to add it again.
The first one is Mr. Greenwood, but we're recommending the condition that the staff has proposed,
Yes.
as well as whatever else we come up with tonight.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly.
So it would be two conditions in our motion. So I don't know if I've made that clear, but does anyone feel comfortable enough making that motion?
I feel comfortable to make that motion with your amendments or additional condition.
Okay, so the accessory dwelling, we're going to take staff recommendation. We're going to approve.
Chairman Rhodes.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure that, because we've been back and forth. So we're going to have to be occupied by immediate family members only. The proposed accessory dwelling to be located behind the front line of the house. The tree buffer to the left side of the property to remain and not be disturbed. And Leland cypress added in front of the proposed accessory dwelling.
Those last two conditions, I don't know that they're on the table right now.
Okay, so just the accessory dwelling being occupied by immediate family member. Okay.
And then the face of it being set back behind the face of the home are the two conditions that I understand.
Okay.
Okay, because it's wooded and so that's, the motion has been made, I believe, Mr. Greenwood, that was your motion with those two conditions.
Yes, ma'am.
I could speak to you separately about it. Do I have a second to the motion?
Madam Chair,
I'll
second the
second.
motion.
All right, so I got Mr. Breeden first. All right, let's go ahead and take the roll, please.
Mr. Breeden.
Aye.
Ms. Height.
Aye.
Mr. Wagner.
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood.
Aye.
Chairman Rhodes.
Aye, well done, group. That was kind of painful, but all right. All right, next up, see.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Go ahead and close the public hearing.
We're closing the public hearing for Mr. Chester. CUP-05-21 has been approved with the conditions. Mr. Chester, thank you for your time this evening.
Thank y'all for struggling through it. And I think you did a wonderful job. And I promise you, I'll do the county proud.
Good. Thank you. Have a good night. All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Next up, CUP-06-21. Chris Kwan is the applicant. This is also for consideration to construct an accessory dwelling on the property. So here we go.
Okay, so this one is to be located at 1053 West Chinkapin Road. He's proposing to construct an accessory dwelling for a family member. He has had the soil work completed for the septic and well. Do not have the permit back yet from the health department. We recommend approval. We've added a condition as somebody had had some concerns about the garage that's currently there. So the two conditions that we would like to see added is that you recommend approval with a condition that only 2 dwellings will be located on the property and that the accessory dwelling be occupied by family members only.
So the second, so you've added a potential condition is only 2 dwellings on the property?
Yeah, and I talked with Mr. Quinn, and I think he should be on here tonight. I did talk with him, and he was planning to be here.
Okay, I'm apologize if I mispronounced his name. I think maybe what we should do is allow him an opportunity to speak a proposal.
What he's doing now, currently, he has an existing house
Okay.
that they're renovating. So they do go back and forth and use the garage. There's no plumbing facilities in the garage, so it's not habitable at this time. But there was a concern that came up about it. So.
And I'm on the call now to
Okay.
kind of respond to this, if that's okay.
Yes.
So thank you for your time this evening. I greatly appreciate it. As far as the garage goes, we call it a clubhouse because my wife is not a fan of a man cave. Basically, it's a place where we can hang out while we're working on the old farmhouse. We do still have electric, plumbing, bathroom facilities, all of that in the farmhouse, but we spend our time out in the garage to avoid the work that's being done. I'm doing most of the work myself with a friend. What we're requesting today is the opportunity to build a second dwelling on the property for my in-laws. They are 70 and 71 years old, respectively. My father-in-law is the one that's 70, and not a sob story. I'm not a builder guy. I don't understand a lot of code things, so please forgive me if I didn't follow the steps exactly. He's got stage 4 kidney disease. He's had a number of 4 heart attacks now. He's had a quadruple bypass as a pacemaker. And we talked about this a while ago before I bought the property in King William. I've lived there for almost 15 years in the subdivision before now, but bought this property in an effort to find a way to relocate them closer to us so that, if someday, his health fails to the point he can no longer take care of my wife's mom, she'll be in a close proximity to us. So that was the premise behind this whole thing, is we wanted to find a way to build them a place to live on our property so that I can help take care of them. There are no other immediate family in the area. His son lives in Charlotte. I don't know how far away that is, probably 6 hours. And her daughter, they had kids from different people. But anyway, her daughter is my wife, who lives in King William. So that's where we're coming from for asking for this request.
Well, thank you. How do you pronounce your last name?
It's Quan.
Quan. Okay, I got it right. Well, thank you for presenting to us and letting us know your circumstances. I think what we may do is, as we did before, I don't know, Ms. Graham, are there slides to show what's proposed for the public to see here?
We do have a few. We'll go ahead and run through them.
Why don't you do that, and then we'll open it up for the public hearing for people to ask their questions.
Okay. This is an aerial taken from our GIS mapping. And this shows that everything in the area is zoned AC. And this is a picture of, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is his house that he's renovating currently. And this just shows that it's wooded around there. You do have a view of another house, and I believe that one is over to the left. Okay.
Any other photographs? Oh, there you go.
Yeah, 2 more.
Is that the driveway? What is that?
That is the front.
The road.
Oh, okay.
So I'll help clear up a little bit here. There's basically 49 acres back behind us that was developed by vertical builders out of Ashland. They bought the property from Jerry Cox. There is a right-of-way, which is the road you're seeing where the sign is, through the front of my property to access those lots in the back. They built 9 houses. All of those are 5 to 6 acre lots. My property line actually goes up around the corner you can see in that picture.
Okay. Right, I'm seeing it now. So it's gravel. There's a site sketch and it shows a 50-foot ingress egress easement that I'm presuming is for that larger parcel in the back.
That's correct. It's 45 foot in some portions and 50 foot in other portions, but yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Yep, there you go. Okay, so your property being the property on this schematic, I don't know if you can see it, which is parcel A identified on the plat. Is your parcel part of a subdivision? Is it subject to covenants and conditions?
No, it is not. The 9 lots behind me are, but I'm standalone. I'm outside of that. The 10 acres and change that I have is by itself. The 2 lots before you get to me, they have some kind of HOA agreement between those 2 lots. And then, like I said, the 9 behind me, but I'm all alone.
All right, well, no matter what even if we approve this tonight, your HOA, if it's in covenants that you can't do it, that would be a separate problem. So it's always good to know, and it sounds like you do. So I think that we can handle this the way we handled Mr. Chester's application, is we can open this up for the public to ask any questions that they may have of Mr. Kwan, and allow an opportunity, and we can use these slides as reference points. What may be helpful is to show us where the proposed dwelling would be. Is it that 20 by 41 building we're looking at now, or is it located somewhere else?
No, the 20 by 41 building was the garage in question. And I can't see the slide. I'm on a phone. It's not blown up enough. It should have been when we did the perking for the sewer and also the well placement. It should have been on the plat map that we're going to be in the right-hand side of the property. And I don't remember what it is. It's 25, 30 feet, whatever, from property line that we have to be. There was one picture that had the trees.
Yeah, Miss Graham, it's another plat that we have in our package that does show where I think the proposed location is. And it says proposed 3-bedroom dwelling. I think that's what it is. Can you find that for the public to see?
Yeah, I don't have it up on this.
Okay, okay.
I thought that was the one right there. I apologize. This came afterwards but he is showing under the plat that was submitted with this paperwork for the soil, for the septic, he is showing it on the right front side.
Yep. Right where it says 2-story frame dwelling, near the ingress egress easement, near where the block shed is, right near that dark area. It's in the right-hand bottom corner of the property, is my understanding. All right, so I think we've got the context we need. We can go ahead and allow the public an opportunity to ask any questions. You see any hands pop up, or I guess it's *9 for the phone. And this is the public hearing portion for folks to have an opportunity to ask any questions about this application for the accessory dwelling. I'm going to allow, let's see, time. Seems like there's a delay sometimes when we're trying to get people on the line. So I'm going to allow 15 seconds. Okay, last call for anyone with questions for the public hearing. Okay, thank you very much. Now we will allow the planning commissioners to ask any questions. Mr. Kwan, if you could remain available, I think you're unmuted.
Yes.
Perfect, good, all right.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'm very sympathetic to the need to take care of elder parents, as I'm dealing with one myself. But I was wondering, this is a 3-bedroom accessory dwelling. This is for your mother-in-law and your father-in-law. So I'm wondering, 3 bedrooms, what's the square footage of this accessory dwelling?
That's a great question. And the actual 3-bedroom application is because that's how the septic system was perked for. What they're intending to build is actually just 1,200 square foot 2-bedroom, where they would utilize one of those as an office. So they're not going to build a 3-bedroom house. When I talked to the individual surveyor to do the septic system, he said, you might as well just do for a 3-bedroom, then you'll be covered for no matter what. If I'd have known that would have been a question to deal with, I would have said, well, just do 2, because that's all they're going to build.
Yeah, I would agree with the 3 bedrooms is accessory dwelling. That's larger than many people's homes. So it is something that I thought of as well. Mr. Bream, do you have other questions?
Only one other question. In looking at the plat that came with the packet, it looks fairly close to the border. How far is it from the property line?
Yes, sir. I was going to move it as far in as requirement made. I think it was 25 feet from I believe it's Plat B that is closest to that property. I'll be way off the front because that's all the way across the easement through there. I'm 100 and some feet back from that front corner, but I was going to come in 25 feet from the sideline to make sure I was plenty far from their property line. Even though their house is way, way, way in the back, I didn't want to cause any issues there.
So how far from the property line will you be?
25 in from the side where B comes across, and it's on that other map that unfortunately y'all don't have in the package or on the presentation. From the front corner where all of the 3 lots combine, it's like 100 and some feet off of that, because I have to provide that 50 foot plus another 25 foot plus some extra just to be safe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I've got.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I was just wondering, like you said, it shows just a little note about 3-bedroom, but do we have anywhere where it shows like the floor plan of what it's going to look like exactly, or just the outside dimensions of this? And then I wanted to tell Mr. Kwan, when you were saying about the 3 bedrooms, all you have to do on that 3rd bedroom, that was, if, like I said, we don't see your plans, but just don't put a closet in that room, and that counts. It makes it so it's not considered a bedroom, and it makes it as an office or something like that.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the comments. I didn't submit a floor plan. They do have the floor plan that they picked out that is a 2-bedroom house. If that's something that is required, I can get that to you. But they're going to build a 2-bedroom house on this location if approved.
Okay, thank you.
Is it 2 stories or 1 story?
It's 1-story single living. With the elevation, if you looked at the pictures, it's kind of a hill. We're going to have to do, I call them basements, but it's not going to be finished. You just have to build up the sidewall because of the elevation to make it 1-story living.
That's a question I had. Mr. Kwan, I think before, well, we don't have to do it before, but you will be required to have a site plan survey and so forth and show the exact location of the house and distance off the front and side property lines. I'm glad to hear you're talking about a 2-bedroom instead of a 3-bedroom. But this is, again, this is a house that you're building or having built for your in-laws, and you indicated they do have health issues. I'm 83 myself. My wife is 79, so I can appreciate what you're doing. But well, the question I have is, once they have moved on, what do you plan to do with the structure?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, you know, I really hadn't thought a lot in the distance. I know that since I have 10 acres and the way I'm requesting to build this house, if it's something that I no longer need for my immediate family use, I could probably petition to have 5 acres broken off and make it its own residence with its own property outside of my ownership.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was leading up to. You can do it as a family division. You haven't owned the property quite long enough. I think you've owned the property about 3.5 years.
That's correct, sir.
In order to do a family division, you would have to be there for 5 years, and then as a family division, the house couldn't be sold by the owner of whoever that might be, you or your family or whatever. It couldn't be sold for another 3 years. Well, under the current ordinance, it's 5 years, but under the new ordinance, if it goes through, it would be 3 years. If we could get something to that effect that you would pursue that, then I think we could go ahead and consider this as a separate lot rather than having 2 houses on the same lot.
And that would be fine with me. I just knew that I hadn't been in the residence long enough to do that now.
Mm-hmm. Well, we may even have a new ordinance that allows it earlier. So. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Height, do you have some questions?
I think most of the questions and concerns I had have already been raised. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? So we've had the 2 conditions that have been proposed by staff. I do have concerns about, currently the application says 3-bedroom. I do have concerns about 3-bedroom. I would be inclined to impose a condition that limits the number of bedrooms or the size of the dwelling to alleviate those concerns in light of the application in front of us. Do you have any planning commissioners have any thoughts about that?
But Madam Chair, I agree with both of those. Even at 1,200 square feet, that seems a little larger than an accessory dwelling normally would be. And as we revise the ordinance, I would recommend a smaller size, but this applicant has in good faith gone forward. The 2-bedroom, 1,200 square feet, while it's a tad larger than I would see as an accessory dwelling. And by the way, that is less than 50% of the primary dwelling. Is that correct? Mr.
Correct.
Quanter?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's one of the things also, it needs to be at least half, no more than half the size of the primary dwelling. So going forward with the ordinance itself, I'd like to see a smaller accessory dwelling limit, but this applicant has in good faith gone forward. The 2-bedroom, 1,200 square feet, I can live with, and I would want to see that be included in the conditions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
I would agree. I appreciate that. Any other comments before we make a motion?
Madam Chair, I agree with that same thing. Just state that it is only going to be a 2-bedroom. And the other one that Mr. Breeden said.
Okay, two bedroom, 1,200 square foot. It's maximum, right? And then the two conditions that have been proposed by staff, Ms. Graham, they are that it would be utilized only by immediate family, and the second would be no more than 2 dwellings on the property.
I would like to see a provision in there that once the property is no longer needed for the immediate family, that the property be considered, that there be consideration for dividing the property. Once that new ordinance goes through, he would only need to provide 3 acres with that as a family division.
Any comments on that? So what you're saying, Mr. Wagner, is that once the property is no longer needed for occupancy by immediate family member, it would trigger the obligation to subdivide the lot.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so that would be a 4th condition. How do the commissioners feel about that? And then I think we're ready to take a vote.
Madam Chair, with what Mr. Breeden said about the maximum size and only 2 bedroom, I don't think we should do that, because then if it gets split apart, it could have been a 3 bedroom and it could have been more than 1,200 square feet. So I don't know.
Well,
yeah, I don't.
Even with a situation here providing a unit for being able to take care of immediate family. So I think the comment that it could be or should be any larger is just out of place.
Yeah, and my thought is there would be a violation of the conditional use permit if it's not used by immediate family. So if there's a desire to sell, then they can subdivide. So I'm okay with not having that additional condition. All right, so we've got the 3 conditions for this conditional use permit. Do we want to take a vote or a motion? Excuse me. Anyone have a motion for me?
I'll make that motion, Madam Chair, with what you just stated with the 3 conditions.
Okay, to approve CUP-06-21 application for Mr. Kwan to construct the accessory dwelling with the 3 conditions as we've discussed. Do I hear a second?
Madam Chair, would you recite those 3 conditions again?
The conditions would be that the property is used by immediate family only. That the second condition would be that no more than 2 dwellings on that lot. And the third condition is that the accessory dwelling be no more than 2 bedrooms and a maximum of 1,200 square feet.
And you would allow the 2 dwellings to remain on the same property?
Yes. As we discussed, if it's not used for immediate family, that's a violation of the conditional use permit. He could subdivide later at a time and it can be used as he wants in the future. So I don't feel that it's necessary to have it as a condition.
But my question there again, and as we discussed earlier, could we put some kind of a condition that this be revisited in 5 years?
I'm not inclined at this moment, just personally speaking, based on the conditional use permit for the accessory dwelling that we just considered. I do think that we need to take a closer look at the ordinance in terms of establishing parameters that make sense, and it provides also a certainty for our applicants. But I don't know that I would do it in this case where we didn't do it for the other. That's my,
But I would agree with Mr. Braden's comment earlier that over the next few months while we're reviewing and revising the ordinances, that we do consider those changes and present them to the Board of Supervisors.
I'm completely open to that based on these two applications.
Alone.
Yes.
That would not be a condition on the property, but it would be a condition for us.
Yes. Yes.
Madam Chair, you have a motion on the floor. I would like to second that motion. We can continue discussion if you like, but I'm seconding Mr. Greenwood's motion.
Thank you. Any discussion before we take a vote? Okay. All right. Ms. Cole, will you take roll in terms of this motion, please?
Mr. Breeden,
Aye.
Ms. Height,
Aye.
Mr. Wagner,
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood,
Aye.
Chairman Rhodes.
Aye. Thank you. Mr. Greenwood, you're going to be proud of me. CUP-06-21 is now closed. We're on to the next agenda item. CUP-07. Oh, thank you, Mr. Kwan. Appreciate it.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate what you do for us.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You as well.
Now we have our fourth and final public hearing for CUP-07-21. This is applicant is Coastal Farm Service. I believe Mr. Crabb is with us this evening. This is to operate an agricultural aerial service on the property. Ms. Graham, will you elaborate for us, please?
Yes, Mr. Crabb is proposing to have a 3,500 foot grass airstrip in order to operate his spray plane business, similar to the one that he had that we approved about a year and a half ago. If approved by the Planning Commission, we would like to see several conditions. I know we had 5 placed in there, but after we had several phone calls, we wanted to add 2 more conditions. So the conditions that we have, the applicant is limited to 5 spray planes, 1 helicopter, and 1 private plane. Applicant will need to obtain all required approvals and permits prior to operation. Development shall proceed after a site plan has been submitted and approved. The applicant will only be allowed to operate from dawn to dusk with the exception of an emergency. The applicant is to follow standard aviation patterns from the north. A vegetated buffer shall be provided between all adjacent property owners and shall be maintained. And this conditional use permit shall become null and void if the business ceases for a period of 2 years.
Thank you. Are there schematics and things of that nature that you could?
We have another small PowerPoint. This is the aerial from our GIS that shows the property in question. This is the zoning map, which shows that all of that area is zoned AC. This is a building that's located on the property. These are some site pictures that shows the field. Okay, and this is what Mr. Crabb submitted with his application, showing the airstrip, not quite in the center, but close to being in the center of the property.
Okay. That's great. Thank you. Is Mr. Crabb available so that he can introduce himself and speak to the Planning Commission? We unmute him. I saw him earlier.
That you should be at the top of the hand raise.
Yeah, there he is. I see him. He must be, I wonder if he's not on the phone,
That's his phone number right up top there.
but his name's popping up. I see it.
Can you guys hear me? Matt Crabb?
Yes, sir. How are you this evening?
Okay. I'm in a very poor reception area and my Zoom is in and out. So I'll have to do over the phone the best I can.
We can hear you fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead. You have some questions for me?
Oh, well, we may, unless you want to speak to if there's anything that Ms. Graham omitted that you would like to add to her discussion, or?
No, ma'am. As you know, I did one 2 years ago, and I had a company come in and purchase the land and everything from me, so it's no longer in my personal possession. The reason for me doing what I'm doing is this is for my personal use, and I also would like to have the conditional use permit. So if I choose to have a commercial operation out of there again, I'm able to. I still do some federal contracts on my own aerially. So that's my reason for doing what we're doing here.
Okay. How large is the property?
Well, I have what's 127 at the it's recorded. I have not had this property surveyed recently, but a plat map I have is showing it's 160. But like I said, I haven't had it surveyed.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, appreciate that. So I would stay on if you would. I would keep Mr. Crabb unmuted. We can go ahead and open up this portion of the public hearing for questions and comments from the public who are in attendance. I see that Mr. Campbell would like to speak. Can we unmute Mr. Campbell? If you could give us just a moment, Mr. Campbell.
Okay, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for my name is Gene Campbell. I live in the 4th District, and my property is immediately to the east of Mr. Crabb's property, borders his property. I did speak with Mrs. Graham today. I had one concern. I was concerned about maybe a buffer along Mr. Crabb's property and my property. But I then spoke to Mr. Crabb later on today, and we came to an agreement that if he would satisfy me as far as a buffer. I have no problem with the zoning for a grass strip airway. And we agreed that a buffer, if needed, we would come to an agreement on what to do.
Thank you. We appreciate that. We like applicants and property owners collaborating. If there's any point was there discussion about the width of the buffer, or are you, was it more just kind of?
We just decided right now there's a line of trees basically along the property line.
Okay.
And we just decided if I wanted some more buffer that we would work something out.
That's wonderful to hear. Okay. Mr. Campbell, thank you. Did you have anything else to add or questions?
No, ma'am. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for raising your concerns and questions. All right. We still have this as an opportunity for folks to chime in on this conditional use permit. please raise your hand, and there's a chat feature if you are doing this by Zoom, or I think you press *9 if you are on the phone, and that will unmute you. So I'm going to give it 30 seconds.
Madam Chair, we had one hand raised. I've unmuted them.
Yes, I don't see it, but if you could unmute them, that'd be great.
Already did.
Is there someone who would like to address the Planning Commission that is unmuted?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Raymond Carter, and as I sit here and listen to you give private property owners a hard time about what they can or cannot do on their property when they've come up with a plan of action, it's very disheartening to hear, especially when two of you grill a gentleman about trying to take care of his mother who is ailing, who's sick. He came up with a plan of action. He had one, he demonstrated, and then you want to impose unreasonable expectations on these people. What in the world? What are y'all thinking? That's what I want to know. What are y'all thinking? Between Ms. Rhodes and Mr. Wagner, you sit here and grill these guys. They give you all the answers, and then you want to spend 45 minutes debating whether or not their landscaping is going to be right. Something wrong with that. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Just for the group, everyone, I appreciate he's entitled to his opinion. These accessory dwellings are not permitted under the zoning ordinance currently. It's well within the purview of the Planning Commission and ultimately the Board of Supervisors to impose conditions. It's a hearty discussion. It was necessary, and those votes were voted unanimously by the Planning Commission. So anyone else would like to speak and address a group about this particular application, please? I will give it another 15 seconds, and then we've got the Planning Commission. Okay, thank you, members of the public, for your comments and questions. We appreciate your time this evening. So the public hearing for the open portion of this is now ended, and we're going to have the Planning Commission. If you all fellow commissioners have questions about the application, I think we still have Mr. Crabb on the line.
Madam Chair, if I may, I have a couple of questions for Mr. Crabb. Mr. Crabb, you say that your previous property, your previous airstrip was purchased by a company. Is that landing strip still in use by this company? Is Mr. Crabb on?
Let's see. He said he was having a hard time with his.
There we go. How about it now?
We can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
There you go. Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, sir. That runway is still in use. Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, the second question I have, we impose certain conditions on the use of that runway.
Yes, sir.
And those conditions go with the property. So if, and Ms. Graham needs to discuss this, but if that current owner is using it beyond those conditions, then that owner needs to come back in for additional permits based on what he's using it for. Another question I had was your landing strip is proposed to be 3,500 feet long, and we talked about this last time, but what length of that runway is needed for your crop duster planes to get in the air and at a reasonable elevation?
Again, that depends on a lot of factors, from environmental conditions to the weight of which loads I would be carrying. Normally 2,500 to 3,000 will take care of it.
And you got some properties to the north where the road, I can't think of the name of the road now, but on
that's Mount Columbia.
There are some properties there. And
yes, sir.
That's something of a concern, whether or not you would be able to get high enough so that you're not disturbing both takeoff and landing.
Yes, sir. On the end, the way the runway is, I have it designed. It's going right up a. If you take a look at the pictures, a marsh, kind of a swamp right through there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, if you look over to your kind of northeast,
right,
it's an all wooded area. The closest resident is, I believe, is about to my south, to the northwest there, but I would, like I said, when I come out, even on the other runway, when I come out, I try to my best to avoid the homes the best I can, turn out, not over top of them.
Okay.
I do that when I was based out of Hanover Airport. I try to stay away from houses.
Yeah, the property at the end of the runway, right at the end of the runway, the north end, does not appear to have a dwelling on it. The one to the left of that does appear that it looks like we've got a couple of houses over to the left, and I don't think
that's
the
correct.
houses to the south of the strip, if you're going to be taking off and landing from the north, they shouldn't be impacted. And I think the runway, from what I saw, the property sets up probably 10 or 12 feet above landing road. Is that correct?
It's higher than that. It's probably about, it's close to, I'd say 25 foot high there from landing road. Yes, sir.
Okay. So that certainly shouldn't be a problem on that end.
No, sir.
That's all the questions I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Any other commissioners' questions?
So Mr. Crabb, what would be the elevation when you crossed your property line to the other property lines? How high would you be in the air?
Normally, when I'm crossing, I'm at 300 feet normally, coming out of there. When I come out, I climb as rapidly as I can, and that's for safety reasons. And like I said, I would do a turnout to the northeast on that, because there's really no one over there there's nothing to affect except trees.
And one other question, how many flights per day maximum would you be looking for?
In season, if we were, I'm just going to use, if we were again running fertilizer or something like that, 15 flights a day, that would be a heavy day. We work off of so many different runways throughout the state of Virginia that it's going to be a very minimal impact on this location as far as running a lot of aircraft out of there. Like I said earlier, one reason I'm looking to build actually a house there eventually and make this my residence, and just to be able to have the opportunity to work out of there if I so choose. That's why I'm applying for the permit.
Okay,
Madam Chair?
yes.
Yes, I was just wondering, I guess I wanted to point out that this is right across the street from the gravel plant, right? Because it looks like that was Mr. Campbell's property that we just discussed earlier. Because I noticed that sharp turn in the Dabney's Mill Road there. You're right across the street. And would you be taking off and landing both ways? I know we put a restriction on your previous permit. You could only go one way and land one way. Would this one be able to go either way, or?
Well, I would mostly go to the north. That's just because of the way it is. But in reality, if the wind's blowing really hard, then in most cases, we're not going to be working out of there. But for my private use, yeah, if the wind's blowing really hard, I would take off towards the south, which it would be minimal impact because, like I said, if the wind's blowing in my private aircraft, it would come out of there pretty steadily. And as you can see, there's farm ground all around me, from the Townsends to Mr. Campbell's property is right next to me, and you know that, as you said, the gravel pit's right over there also. So it's a lot of open ground, farm ground without residential impact.
Right, exactly. And another question, I have had some constituents talk to me about this because, like you said, you just came to us a few years back and said the same thing, and you're still going to be crop dusting. Can we have a reason? Because they're asking me why you got rid of the other property after you just went to the expense and thing of having the strip put on there.
Well, I still work for that company. This is again this is my private strip here. This is for me. And I just want, like I said, if things may work out forever and I may be wonderful and it may never work out of there, but I like I said, I still have a couple contracts that I do have an aircraft, and I would like to be able to work out of there without any issues. So that's why I'm applying for this.
Right. Yeah, I remember you told us at the last one that you were from Hanover, and this will be a lot closer to the properties that you're doing the crop dusting for here in our county. That
is correct. It's been a wonderful adventure. I can tell you, it's been a whole lot better. Hanover's gotten so busy, but it's very nice. It's nice being in the county.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I had.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Greenwood. Ms. Height, do you have any questions?
I do. Mr. Crabb, I know you've got, if this were to be approved, I know there's a lot of other approvals that you have to get from the FAA and some other requirements. Is there a requirement that limits the proximity to where this airstrip would be to where the previous one that we did for you was approved?
No, ma'am. As a matter of fact, this runway you're looking at is approved by the FAA right now. It's on maps. It's on sectional charts, aeronautical charts.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. You're very welcome.
Are there other questions?
Mr. Crabb, Don Wagner again.
Yes, sir.
At what distance are you away from the Pamunkey River? About 1,000 feet. Is that fair?
I've never done a measurement on that. It's probably a little more than 1,000. Well, I got that pond beside me, but the river, the Pamunkey itself, I'm a little distance from that.
And the reason I asked that question, and this is really a comment from Ms. Graham, but the reason I asked that question is when we're in such and such in a certain distance from the adjacent county, we should be notifying the adjacent county. And I don't think that was done, but it should be done.
From Hanover County?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not sure of that. I'm not sure.
Okay,
I could get a measurement for you from where we're talking about from the strip to the river, but I'm not 100. I can't honestly tell you what the distance is.
Yeah, I can scale it off the map.
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Crabb, this is This is Janie Rhodes. I don't know if you can
Yes,
see.
ma'am.
I think you're on the phone. So what are their spray planes? And then Miss Graham mentions 3 fixed wings and a helicopter. What's the difference? What are the fixed wings and the spray planes? Are they the same thing?
Well, they are the same thing. Fixed wing, and then you have rotor wing, they call it.
Okay.
So the spray, I have, currently I just have 2 in my possession.
Okay.
And then and they're in Hanover.
What kind of noise do the planes and the helicopter generate? I know that we've got hours of limitation, and there's a for operation, or I believe that we do, dawn to dusk.
Yes, correct.
Was the buffer going to help with that, or can you elaborate a little bit on that?
It's each aircraft is different, and helicopter, each one is different. We're running turbine aircraft, which are quieter aircraft. They're not as loud as pistons. Now, for my personal plane, I have a piston aircraft, but they're not very loud. It's just like when one flies over top of your house.
Okay.
Very similar to the same thing.
Okay. Gotcha. I don't have any other questions.
Madam Chair, I have one other one.
Yeah, good.
Mr. Crabb, I think we talked about this in your previous application, but I just wanted to clarify it for this one. I know that this is, an intended, for you to put your house and then have the ability to use it as an airstrip. I just wanted to ask the question whether any chemicals used as part of your business would be stored on site.
I don't sell chemical. So I'm just in the application business. The only thing that we ever stored and in the past has been a product that the farmer comes and picks up. And of course we have containment facilities for all that stuff when we do. But at this moment, no, I'm not.
Thank you. I thought you had clarified that for us before, but I just wanted to make sure for this application. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. So currently what we have is the proposed application, as we've just discussed, and staff recommendations for 5 conditions is enumerated in our packet, plus 2 additional conditions, which are a vegetative buffer will be provided around, and Ms. Graham, please clarify, is it around all perimeters?
I did it around all adjacent property owners. One side, the side to the left really is not going to need anything, but along Landing Road and some to the right will need some vegetation.
So how would you like to draft that condition?
I just noted a vegetated buffer shall be provided between all adjacent property owners and shall be maintained.
Okay. And then the 7th condition that you've provided and recommended would be that the use permit would become null and void if the business is not conducted for a period of 2 years or more.
Yep, but shall become null and void if the business ceases for a period of 2 years.
Okay, ceases for 2 years. So that's what we currently have on the table. Do the commissioners feel comfortable with those conditions? Have any questions or additional conditions that they want to talk about?
I'm good with those conditions. The only thing I would caution against is any vegetative buffer planted at the end of the runway would have to be limited in height. And I think you could get more information from Mr. Crabb about what height they should be. But basically, when you have an airstrip, trees are not desirable at the at the ends of the runway.
Okay. Anybody else?
Madam Chair, I have a couple things for staff. On the, when you do a blow up, Mount Columbia Road follows along the northern end of the airport where he'll be taking off and landing. I only see one house on the GIS. Was anyone on Mount Columbia Road where he'll be taking off and landing notified?
So we had Mr. Gibbons, 26-51. And, yeah,
Can you show with the pointer where that is?
click on another map, that might be better. Go back a little bit. To the zoning map right there.
There we go, thank you.
Okay, so 26-51 is to the top. Go up one more, right there.
Right, right.
Yeah. And then 26-45, which is to the left side along the whole length of the property.
Okay. And so they were notified and they had no concerns?
No.
Thank you. And one final thing. So if we approve this, there will be 2 runways in the same general vicinity that are both authorized to have flights. Do we want to limit it to as long as this applicant owns the land, or otherwise, do we need 2 runways in that same general area? Because the other one can continue to have flights, correct?
Yeah, I don't remember. Go ahead.
May I make a comment?
Please, thank you.
Yep, that's okay. You have actually 3 runways in this general area, and right in this direct area within, I'd say about a 6-mile radius. And we all coincide well together, talk to each other.
Is the other one at the golf course?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And he has quite a bit of activity out there. So we all keep up with each other pretty well.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, anyone else? All right, well, I think we may be ready for a motion then. Mr. Breen, I don't think you were asking for an additional condition. You just wanted a response to the question.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, so if we make the motion to approve CUP-07-21, the application for Coastal Farm Service, and it would be subject to the 7 conditions that we just discussed, and I'm happy to repeat those conditions if you all would like me to.
You don't need to, Madam Chair.
Okay. Do I have a motion? Mr. Wagner?
No, I don't need those conditions. I'm ready to make the motion with the recommend approval with the conditions as stated.
As recommended by staff. Do I have a second? Well, I can second.
Yeah, Mr. Greenwood just did, I think.
Good. All right. So if we could have Ms. Cole roll on that motion, please. Or Ms. Graham.
Sorry, we're waiting. We're trying to unmute Mr. Greenwood.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Did he mute himself?
He's back.
Okay. All right, Mr. Greenwood?
Yeah, I was muted. That's why I couldn't talk, because I lost internet connection. They didn't get me back. So yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Aye.
Mr. Breeden?
Aye.
Ms. Height?
Aye.
Mr. Wagner,
Aye.
Chairman Rhodes.
Aye. So the motion passes unanimously for CUP-07-21 with the conditions proposed by staff. That public hearing is now closed. Thank you, everyone, for your participation, lively discussion. That concludes our public hearing portion of this meeting. We have unfinished business, I think only one item of which may be really relevant to tonight's conversation, which is the new water tower location discussion. I don't think we have Bowman, the engineering firm, with us this evening, but I do believe that we have Mr. Hudgens perhaps with us. As you all remember, and we discussed earlier, the proposed water tower was tabled due to concerns that were actually expressed earlier this evening. And so maybe we start off with Mr. Hudgens addressing the group about alternatives and where we are now.
Thank you. Yes, the focus of my discussion tonight is not to defend the Kelly Lane site, but to show where we are at with locating alternate sites, comparing them, and assessing feasibility. We do not have an alternate location that staff recommends at this time. Since the last Planning Commission meeting, I and our consultants have proceeded with the goal of finding an alternate that is comparable to the location at Kelly Lane. We began by directing Bowman to analyze the industrial park as a potential site and also to provide a hydraulic analysis of Kelly Lane as a comparison. I wanted to try the industrial park first because we've got a water issue there that we needed a solution for, and I was still hoping to kill two birds with one stone, possibly locating the tower at that site and looping in the industrial park to the rest of the central garage water system. Besides that location and the Kelly Lane hydraulic analysis, the Bowman offered to test the existing water tower site, not to analyze that tower, but as a location to co-locate a water tower, which they tell me is done. And during these analysis, I had a call from a citizen who offered his property, which was just up Route 30 from the Kelly Lane location. We'll go to the next slide. When I had that offer, I let the Upper Mattaponi know, made them aware of this offer and wanted to get their thoughts, comments on that, as it was further away from Indian View Church, but still well within their historic area. They responded in the negative, did not want the water tower at that location for the same reasons as the Kelly Lane location. But rather than just giving us a no, they looked at our master utility plan, came up with a they proposed to us a site in the Manquin area that was in line with our master utility plan and that they felt was the comparable alternative. When I had that proposal, I immediately sent that to Bowman as well to analyze, and I just got those results today. And by analysis, we were looking at, in all of these locations, we're looking at construction feasibility, which in a lot of ways means its elevation relative to the existing water tower. And we're also looking at functionality. Is it performing for the fire flow that we need it to perform, the pressure, and that's why we need a tower to begin with, as well as is it actually storing safe drinking water, and that gets into the cycling of water within a tower. While all the sites met the eye test of functionality and feasibility, it was only with hydraulic analysis that we could tell if they would function with this cycling. So how much water is actually going through that tower If it sits not being used in the tower, then it will have water quality issues, bacteria issues, chlorine issues. And we can only see that with a hydraulic analysis, comparing it with where the growth is, where the wells are, what's being used, that sort of thing. Go to the next slide. And this is what I was sent today. And analyzed, showing all the sites. These notes really have to do with the Manquin site in comparison to the Kelly Lane site. And sadly, even though it passed the eye test, it is not recommended by the engineers because it did not cycle well. In fact, the Manquin site and the industrial park site, neither one do well with cycling and therefore are not recommended. The next best site to Kelly Lane is the site that is adjacent to the existing tower. But even that still does not perform well. In fact, right now, as the towers function, a well kicks on once the water in the tower reaches 85%. If it drops from 100 to 85%, a well kicks on and it fills it back up. If we were to use that same scenario with the tower, at these proposed locations, the proposed tower would take a very long time to cycle through its water. The ideal time to cycle would be 72 hours, and most of these are weeks, if not more. One way to combat this would be to allow the tank to draw down much further before a well kicks on. So that would be table number 2, comparing what happens when we go down to 40% capacity in tanks. It is still not ideal. Kelly Lane performs the best, but the industrial park, the existing tank site in Manquin are still out of the range that we would like it to be. And operations-wise, putting our tanks at 40% is also a risk that we don't want to take if we don't have to. And it's for these reasons that we do not have a site that we have identified as the one yet. However, this is not to argue that we need to go back to Kelly Lane. We feel that we need to continue looking at sites. The engineers suggested looking at one of our existing well sites. I know that at least in Kennington, there is space around the well, but we have not run any tests on that. We just got this today. I am open to any questions and further explanation.
Okay, for the planning commissioners, it's a lot of information. We'll have questions about these alternative locations for Mr. Hutchins.
I just have one question. Go ahead, Don.
The first question I had, and we had discussed this before, not with you, but among ourselves, is it possible to raise the height of the towers to get the kind of circulation or the cycle that we need?
The height of the tower, the rule of thumb is that $5,000 per foot of height that tower has to go. And the height that this water is stored at in the tower must be equal to the height of the existing tower. So the lower in elevation that we start with, the taller the tank needs to be.
Okay. I guess the other concern we all have is we're, as you well know, working on the comp plan now. And while we would certainly like to see something done with both the water and sewer for the existing corridor, I'm not so sure we should be going too far on the other areas outside of the 360 corridor until we complete the comprehensive plan and know what our anticipated future zoning and land use will be.
Sure. I would say that most of the expected growth is on the, or expected service is on the 360 corridor.
Mm-hmm. If it were just planned for the 360 corridor, is a water tank in that area sufficient to provide for that?
No, our water tank, our existing water tank right now is does not provide the fire flow that it needs to for all the housing that we actually have.
Right.
Not to the standards that we need.
Mm-hmm. But that has a lot to do with the size of the tank. What is that tank size?
300,000 gallons is our existing
And we're
tank.
proposing the 600,000.
Correct.
On the initial study, there were 4 sites, and the Kelly Lane was picked as the best one. So they had not done the hydraulic studies on the other 3 sites.
Correct. They just did a high level look. It's a study in itself to dig deeper than that. So they identified Kelly Lane, and we move forward with that.
And the Manquin site, so that's the one down near, and I don't have that study in front of me. That's the one down near the Union Bank.
Close to that location. So it was not identified in the master utility plan. This is the location that the Upper Mattaponi, they found a willing landowner. And this piece of property actually borders both Manfield Road and 360. So we could have located the tank in a number of areas in that parcel, and potentially setting up a loop from the Marl Hill subdivision down Manfield across 360, along with the easement that is already in place servicing water to the Marl Hill, which is why both I and consultants, when first looking at this, thought this is a good solution. We can possibly work with that. And it would bring us closer to the Commerce Park, which, even if it wasn't identified as a next project, it's certainly a priority for the county to move water in that direction.
Absolutely.
And how many feet would you have to build up to be equal to the Kelly Lane?
Well, we would have to build up height-wise. It's that first number. We're about 20. They say the Kelly Lane was at 170, but it was more like 165, I think. And they're saying that the Manquin side is 145. So it was about 20-foot difference.
Okay.
About $100,000.
$100,000. Thank you.
But that to me is not the what's breaking this site right now, and it's this water cycling issue that the Manquin site is, even if we drew down to 40%, would still take over 20 days to cycle through the water in that tank. And that is regardless of the height. That just has to do with where the wells and the buildings are going.
You're not asking for anything from us tonight. Could we have a copy of these slides?
Sure.
Thank you.
No, I just want to make you aware of where we're at with this. I was hoping that with this proposal that I would be able to say this is a great site, asking your permission, but we're not there yet.
Thank
Well,
you.
we appreciate your hard work on this. Ms. Height, anyone else have any comments? Mr. Greenwood?
Yes, I'd like to ask Mr. Hudgens something. I guess when we were sitting there getting our shots, you were saying maybe on some existing well sites, could another tower be put in right next to the tower we have now? I know there is some land there. Would that be the vicinity?
It could be, and that is what one of these sites that was analyzed is showing in tables 1 and 2. It didn't perform the worst, but it's still out of the range that we would like it to be.
Oh, so even there would still not be ideal.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else? So I see that Chief Adams has stayed on the line with us, and we did indicate if he wanted to speak, we would allow the opportunity. If we do that, we will allow anybody an opportunity to speak to this issue. So Chief Adams, would you like to address the group, or do you feel comfortable in moving on?
Yeah, I would like to address the group. And just to say, I'm certainly not an expert in water towers, but I am an expert in Adamstown ancestral properties in King William County. And my question is, I guess for Mr. Hudgens is, and he may not know this answer, but the water tower, the existing water tower now, with all the studies that are being done now, why did they put the tower where it is if it's not an optimal spot when they first built it?
I don't have the full answer to that. I would say it was a good spot at the time. It is right in the middle of growth, and it is at high ground, but it just wasn't large enough to sustain continued growth. And I'm not sure how much planning went into what are we going to do for build out. I don't believe they had any kind of master utility plan at the time. It was just a start.
Okay, thank you. And I'm just got to say, the first two sites that came on the table, the Kelly Lane site and then the other site that's kind of across from the high school and the landfill, the transfer station. Both of those sites were property that was owned, occupied by citizens of the Upper Mattaponi tribe. So, and that is why we have objected to both of those sites, and we will continue to object to those sites as this procedure moves forward. So good luck on finding a good spot, and I hope that we can make all the citizens of King William happy and the citizens of the Upper Mattaponi tribe happy. And thank you for your time.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Adams. We're grateful for you hanging in there with us this long evening.
Yeah, you're well past my bedtime now, for sure.
I think we can all attest to that. Appreciate your time. We are now going to, even though we've already had a public comment period, we would like to open this up for an opportunity for participants to ask any questions they may have for Mr. Hudgens. I believe that we've got some hands raised and some folks who would like to speak. So if you would give us a moment, we will unmute you. I see hands raised.
Madam Chair, this is Steve Tuppence. Looks like I was unmuted first. Just would like to point out on the 2 Kelly Lane properties, in the master utility plan, it appears as though there is a potential developer, DKI Homes, who would like to develop approximately 300 homes in what is present day Adamstown. With that being said, the placement of a water tower at Kelly Lane would only really service those particular homes in that area. Everything that would surround that location would not be serviced because it wouldn't fall within the master utility plan because there are already built out subdivisions. So really, that particular or those locations, not only is it objectionable to the strongly objectionable to the Upper Mattaponi, really looking forward down the road, it would be built only to service or be available to cycle for those potentially proposed homes that were identified in the master utility plan. There's nothing before the planning commission, no plans submitted to the planning department for that. So even the study that has been developed based off of that potential of homes does not exist as it would equate to the Manquin location. And in speaking with Mr. Hudgens today, one of the reasons they're looking at well sites and placing the tower there is it would allow the well to fill the or not to necessarily provide water to the system in passing serviceable neighborhoods before hitting the tower. It would actually fill the tower first, and then the tower would provide water to the system. So I would ask Mr. Hudgens if it would be appropriate if the Upper Mattaponi went back to the landowner who is willing to provide land for the tower in the Manquin area, if he would be willing for a well site to be placed along with that tower, so that the water would cycle from the well to the tower, and then the tower would then feed the system.
You're certainly welcome to do that. I would like to put that to our engineers first to make sure that, well, without running a full-scale analysis, get their expertise comment on would it fix or could it potentially fix the problem?
Right. Because Mr. Hudgens, I think really even looking at growth on the 360 corridor, I think that growth is going to be to the west of 30, not necessarily going to the east of 30 down towards Kennington in that area. I think as you move out of Hanover, you're going to see that growth from the Hanover line down to 30 and into Central Garage. And I think it's going to be a little bit further down the line before we actually see significant growth down towards the Alet end of 360.
I understand. We just have to find a tower location that's going to work both now and in the future. Because wherever we're putting it, it's not going to be closed off from the other system, and it's not going to be in service, or it's going to be in service well before build out. So it's got to have use from existing homes as well as what's coming.
Now, I understood, and I think with some of the developments that are occurring there in the Manquin area and Marl Hill, you've got that one subdivision behind the proposed tower location. You've got Guy Townsend, who just put his property back up for sale down 360. So there is the potential of additional development in that Manquin area. And really, I think what you're saying tonight is there's really no ideal location for the placement of a water tower based on the development that we have today. It's all on projected development and where that development may or may not occur.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Do you have any questions for Mr. Hudgens?
See somebody else's hand raised, but I don't know why they're not getting unmuted. J.M. Jennings.
Oh, I don't see that.
They're at the top of the list, participant list.
Tracking, I've already sent them the ask to unmute.
So is he being unmuted?
They should be getting a prompt that they have to accept.
Okay. Oh, I saw it click. I don't see the hand up. Stephen, where does it show up?
It's in the right-hand column. It has the initials in a square, then the name, and then it's got the hand, the microphone, and the video camera.
Huh.
just be aware it took me quite a long time for me to get the prompt to unmute.
Oh.
Gotcha. Okay. Good to know.
I've clicked the ask to unmute several times and I'm still waiting.
Okay. Do you see any other hands popping up
No, ma'am.
or requests? Okay, so I'm going to give it 20 seconds.
I got a note in the chat that says he's trying to speak, but he can't speak.
So I wonder if the only alternative is he on an iPad?
Yeah. Yeah.
The only alternative is to call in, and I don't know if we're going to have time for that. And I'm not certain is there a reason why it wouldn't be working on his end?
Not that I'm aware of.
It could be that he's got his own mute button on.
Quite possible.
Okay. All right. Oh, are there any other hands?
That's the only one I've seen, ma'am.
I would only recommend to him if he wants to try to call in, I'll give it another 30 seconds. Allow him to call in. That information should be on the website, right, Ms. Graham?
Yes.
Okay. Because I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
Yep. So let's give it 30 seconds. Technology can be so frustrating. I've had that happen where you can't speak and you got to call in and it's just maddening. 10 seconds and then we'll need to move on. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your comments. Mr. Hudgens, anything else? You've done a great job tonight. We're grateful.
No, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you. Okay. So it's getting late. I'm getting punchy. I will say for the ordinance survey results discussion, I think the pertinent thing there is that we have scheduled on April the 12th, I guess at 7 p.m., our joint session with the Board of Supervisors and the Planning Commission, where I believe the Berkeley group is going to be present and we'll be discussing the survey and the stakeholder results for the proposed ordinance changes, and we hope you all can make it. The Berkeley group will be discussing those, and I believe we'll also be providing recommendations. Ms. Graham, do you have anything to add to that?
Not to that, no.
Okay. Any commissioners want to add anything or think that we need to address anything regarding the proposed ordinance changes other than what I've mentioned?
No.
Okay, good. All right. Don't believe we have any new business. Does anyone have any questions about the logs that staff provided to us in our packets? And Ms. Graham, do you have anything of particular note that you'd like to raise?
Just that we are getting ready to get our team together on the comp plan. They did send me a draft survey today. I did not get a chance to get it out to everyone. I will. I want everyone to take a look at it and submit any comments that you may have. They've done that. They are getting ready to send me some draft logos for us to use on our comp plan. I will send those to you as soon as I get them. They are trying to set up a meeting with the Parks and Rec Director and the EDA. And we're getting ready to set a date for the kickoff meeting for the public. So I will keep y'all updated, and our team will be getting them together very soon.
Thank you, Ms. Graham. Thank you for this evening. I hope you all are feeling okay, Ms. Graham and Ms. Cole and Mr. Hudgens and Vice Chair, Mr. Greenwood.
And Eric.
Yeah, Eric, yeah, you all feeling okay. Any commissioner comments before we adjourn?
Madam Chair, if I may, I was going to ask about the comp plan. So thank you, Ms. Graham, for that update. I was anxious. I was looking at the schedule and we're a little bit behind. I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight, attending. And I especially want to thank Mr. Hudgens and Ms. Graham. You're both in an acting role. You're juggling multiple balls in the air. And it's tough and folks need to be patient. And I thank you for your service. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I would just, to add to what Mr. Braden said, I would like to thank Mr. Tuppence and Chief Adams for their participation in the meeting and their insight into the issues that we're dealing with. So thank you all so much.
Good. Mr. Greenwood?
Yes, I want to thank everybody for coming as well. We had a pretty good crowd there to begin with. Like I said, it was 40 some people. And Mr. Jennings is sending me something privately. I told him to send it to everybody. All he's asking is that he was told that it is a tank and not a tower. But I wanted to clarify all the things we talk about are towers. Because I asked Mr. Hudgens about this earlier. We can't have tanks because tanks are too low. Everything for our county is a tower. It's called a tank, but it's actually one on a post with a big ball at the top, because he said the low ones, because that's what I was asking, if we could put a low tank on the Kelly Lane that maybe the reservation would allow, because you wouldn't see it as bad. And he said that it just doesn't work with the low squatty tanks like they have in the city. So I think that's the only question he had, but we'll find out more later. And thanks everybody. And sorry it took so long. And yep, all Emma's a little sore, but thanks everybody.
Thank you for that clarification too. That's helpful. Ms. Height?
Yes, I just wanted to concur with the other commissioners. Thanks to everyone that joined tonight. Thank you to Mr. Adams and Mr. Tuppence for providing input to the conversation, and thanks to all the applicants who were able to attend and answer questions tonight.
Okay, great. I concur with everyone's sentiments. I thank the general public for your participation and interest. It's encouraging. I know we have our differences of opinions. It was a little bit painful getting through it tonight. I think we got to a good place, and grateful for your attendance. So with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, second.
Second.
All right. Okay, I've got two. We'll take Mr. Breedens. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. The meeting is adjourned. It's 10:20 in the evening. Get some sleep, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Janie.
Everyone.